Chapter 925. The mountain wind whistled, making it hard to tell whether it was the sound of blades clashing, or the sound of blades clashing. However, humans were born with a natural sense of danger. Over 100 soldiers lit up their weapons and faced their surroundings. They retreated step by step, gathering together. "Since you're here, don't hide anymore. Reveal your identity openly." The moment she heard the voice, Chu Qingyan's heart skipped a beat. However, she quickly calmed down. She raised her voice. Her voice was crisp and clear, accompanied by the whistling of the mountain wind. It had an independent and clear beauty to it. Intentionally or unintentionally, her voice was lowered, and her aura was released. Sometimes, gaining the upper hand by a show of strength could stabilize one's position. It would prevent them from losing their footing when they were outnumbered and lacking confidence. As Chu Qingyan's voice fell, the sound of metal rings clanging against each other could be heard. Following that, layers and layers of soldiers appeared around the valley like bamboo shoots after a rain. They held long spears in their hands, and their auras were imposing. They looked at them with excited and bloodthirsty expressions. In an instant, a heavy darkness surrounded the group. Sweeping her eyes over their familiar military uniforms, Chu Qingyan softly called out, "Nan Song." In this situation, it seems a bit strange to say long time no see. However, this crown prince feels that in this kind of scene where old friends meet, this greeting can't be missing. "Chu Qingyan, long time no see." Just as Chu Qingyan was observing the surrounding terrain and the soldiers surrounding them, a voice came from the mountain valley's exit. The tone was very leisurely and carefree. As soon as the voice came out, it was blown away by the mountain wind, making it impossible to recognize the original voice. At this time, if it was in a different place, it would definitely make people think that it was some family's young master coming out for a walk and meeting an old friend. Unfortunately, this place wasn't a place where people would be in the mood to sing a song or recite a poem. Chu Qingyan turned around and looked towards the mountain valley's exit. A blue figure walked out unhurriedly from the path that Nan Songbing had opened up. Cloud patterns dyed his sleeves and extended to the hem of his long gown. His gown fluttered in the wind, giving off a natural and unrestrained feeling. However, when Chu Qingyan got used to the light at the exit and saw the person's face, she sucked in a breath of cold air. His skin was bronze-colored, and his figure was tall and burly. His phoenix eyes were majestic, and just by standing there without moving, he gave off an awe-inspiring aura. She was stunned. This person was actually Pang Huang, the southern Blue Crown Prince who she had fought twice in the Fuli mountain range half a year ago. He was also the commander of the Southern Blue Army. "Should I be glad or unlucky that my opponent is actually you?" Chu Qingyan curled her lips into a smile, as if she was teasing him, but also as if she was mocking herself. Other than a moment of surprise, there was no other expression on her face. Pang Huang looked at her from 10 steps away. From afar, she looked like a scenery, but up close, she was like a painting. She had the same red gown, the same hairstyle, and the same appearance. However, he didn't know why, but he felt that she had changed a lot in this short half a year. It was just that it was hard to see with his eyes. Pang Huang looked into her bright and clear eyes, and his gaze flickered. "I don't know if I should be glad or unlucky. You don't seem to be too happy to see me. Do you think that at this moment, when two armies are facing each other and drawing their swords, I'd be happy to see you?" Chu Qingyan laughed lightly, but the smile on her lips didn't reach her eyes. Pang Huang pondered for a moment. Just when everyone thought that he was thinking of some bad idea, they all went on guard. However, they heard him say, "Do you mean that if we were in a place where there are no outsiders, you'd be willing to sit down and chat with me? You think too highly of yourself." Cheng Yenluo impatiently glared at the person in front of her. "What do you want? If you want to kill or chop, just say the word and we'll accompany you. Don't block our way with your burly appearance and talk about romance." "I'm sorry, but we don't have time for that." Cheng Yenluo's words greatly displeased the soldiers behind Pang Huang. They were about to raise their swords at her, but Pang Huang raised his hand to stop them. They reluctantly retreated. At this moment, Pang Huang's gaze landed on Qing Yanluo. He smiled. I thought that we Nansang people were valiant, while the Sichuan people were thin and slender. Today, I see that your country isn't just like that. I'll take that as a compliment. I won't stand on ceremony and accept it. However, that's a separate matter. I won't be fooled by your flowery words. Qing Yanluo snorted and retorted sarcastically. Qing Yanluo's scolding was truly satisfying. However, Chu Qingyan quickly retracted her smile and said with a cold gaze, Prince of Nansang, let's not beat around the bush. Were you the one who poisoned Jiangning County? That's right. Pang Huang readily agreed. Although the poison you used is extremely potent, the antidote is quite common. In fact, your goal isn't just to obtain Jiangning County. Am I right? Chu Qingyan's tone was as calm as ever. Pang Huang nodded and said without hesitation, that's right. Not only do I want Jiangning County, but I also want Xiao Su's life. Chu Qingyan's gaze hardened. So, the poison is potent, but the herbs aren't rare. You wanted to set up a formation in the valley to lure us in? You're half right. This formation was actually set up for Xiao Su. Pang Huang shook his head and said regretfully, unfortunately, the person who came wasn't him, but you. Therefore, you'll die in his place. Although his tone was regretful, his expression didn't betray his feelings. Instead, Pang Huang looked at her with great interest, as if he was looking at a delicious piece of meat. Chu Qingyan felt a chill run down her spine at her own thoughts. However, according to Pang Huang's plan, even if the big ice cube didn't come, he would still die in Jiangning County before he could wait for the antidote. It was as if they were already prey on the chopping block and didn't need to waste any effort to resist this lousy scheme. Pang Huang was extremely cooperative and spoke tirelessly. However, it doesn't matter who comes, because even the best doctor in Sichuan wouldn't know that once the Luo Sha poison flares up, it will infect everyone who touches him. When that happens, 1 will spread to 10, 10 will spread to 100. Not only Xiao Su, but the entire Jiangning County will be hard-pressed to escape. When Pang Huang said this, he glanced over Chu Qingyan, Qing Yanluo, and the others' expressions of shock and disbelief. The corners of his mouth curled up as he continued to speak faintly. After 3 or 4 days, we won't even need to send out an army to easily take back Jiangning County. At that time, without Xiao Su as the final barrier, the entire Sichuan will be as easy as pie. Sooner or later, all of Sichuan will be swallowed up by my southern blue. Pang Huang, do you think the enemy's words can be trusted on the battlefield? Regardless of whether it was true or false, Chu Qingyan clenched her fists and did her best to appear as calm as possible. This was because her current behavior would directly affect the hearts of the 100 soldiers present. Believe it or not, I don't like to force people to do things. Pang Huang smiled indifferently. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips even tighter. Chapter 926. She had once heard Big Ice Cube's evaluation of Pang Huang. This person was capable of doing anything. From his cold-blooded treatment of his own brothers, it was enough to see that this person was ruthless and merciless. In order to achieve his goals, he would do anything. In order to seize a city, he could be ruthless and use the lives of a city's people in exchange for victory. Perhaps he didn't even need to do so, but in order to save trouble, he indifferently chose the most direct and at the same time, the cruelest method. Even if what you said is true, so what? Chu Qingyan pulled herself together. While talking to him, she looked around, not letting go of any opportunity that could be used. Beside her, Yan Luo had already begun to doubt whether Rasha would harm others, not to mention whether the soldiers she brought with her would be swayed by him. She had to make the best use of her time. She would not give up until the last moment. Pang Huang was very surprised by her performance. He knew that she clearly knew that what he said was true, but at this moment, in order to stabilize the morale of the soldiers, she didn't show any trace of panic. Instead, she looked around vigilantly, like a hibernating cheetah, waiting for the slightest gap to appear and she would jump out. Really interesting. He rarely saw such a tenacious and confident woman. She had aroused a strong interest in his heart. Very good, you're worthy of being trained by Xiao Su. In the face of danger, I'm afraid many of the soldiers around me can't compare to you. Pang Huang smiled ambiguously and continued, I admire you very much. Why don't we find a place to talk about old times? If you can make me happy, I'll let you go, how about it? Two armies are at war, and your country is very interested in talking about anything and everything at this time. So you treat war as child's play? If so, this one is very skeptical of your country's commander-in-chief, Crown Prince Pang's ability. After all, to be able to do this, I think ordinary people can't do it. Chu Qingyan's eyes were full of disdain. As soon as these words came out, the soldiers behind Pang Huang became restless again. Some looked at her angrily, while others secretly glanced at their crown prince. Could it be that he really treated war as child's play? Pang Huang laughed lowly, Chu Qingyan, you want to provoke me and then take advantage of the chaos to kill a bloody path, right? Unfortunately, I won't let you get what you want. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips. Her move was indeed too obvious. She was a little impatient. There are still 6 hours left. If we don't depart now, I'm afraid we won't make it back in time. Cheng Yanluo quietly tugged at her sleeve and reminded her in a low voice. Chu Qingyan nodded as she frowned slightly. Then, she looked up at the sun. It was almost noon, and her heart felt like it was being scratched by a cat's claws. She was extremely anxious, but she restrained herself from showing it. Are you in a hurry to go back? Don't you think this mountain is very beautiful? It's perfect for what you Sichuan love to do the most, reciting poems and making couplets. Pang Huang's gaze had been locked on her face. Her every move did not escape his sharp eyes. At this time, seeing her frown, he guessed that she was anxious. But he had some doubts in his heart. According to reason, the poison should be tomorrow, but she had a feeling that she couldn't wait to send the antidote back. Don't tell me you want to recite poems too. I heard that you Southern Blue people look down on us Sichuan scholars the most. Are you trying to make a fool of yourself at this time? Chu Qingyan couldn't help but roll her eyes. She really wanted to directly attack the tiger in front of her. But after considering the strength of both sides, she could only give up on this idea. It was normal to sacrifice oneself in war, but she couldn't let her people make unnecessary sacrifices. Pang Huang didn't care at all about the thorns in her words. He leisurely stood in the same place because he knew that his motionlessness was the best way to restrain her and the people behind her. She was a smart person. She wouldn't choose to strike a stone with an egg at this time. The people present had at least experienced many battles, but they had never seen two armies facing each other like this. They didn't start fighting, but slowly wore out time, as if they were competing to see who could last longer. Time slowly passed as the two armies faced each other. While everyone was waiting impatiently, Chu Qingyan's lowered brows suddenly focused. There was a flash of light in her eyes before they returned to normal. Just now, she had been casually replying to Pang Huang's words, but now, she took the initiative. Crossing her arms, she looked at him and said, Your Highness, I heard that you like to make bets with others, and you always win. Is that true? Your information is quite accurate. That's right, this prince is good at this. After replying, Pang Huang looked over her and gave a chuckle. Could it be that you're bored right now and want to make a bet with this prince? I, Chu Qingyan, am not a cultured person. Eating, drinking, riding, shooting, and gambling, perhaps I can play a few games. You have more people and I have fewer people. If you don't let me go, I won't be able to leave. Since I'm bored, how about we make a bet? Chu Qingyan gave a self-deprecating laugh. It was like she was making a life-or-death struggle as she spoke. Pang Huang had been trying to figure out her thoughts the entire time. When he tried to find a topic to talk to her about, she kept drifting away. It could be seen that she was thinking of a countermeasure, but he never thought that she would make this request. Since she wanted to play, then he would play with her. But before this, he had to make it hard for her. It's not that we can't make a bet, but... Pang Huang dragged out his words. When he saw her cold expression, his lips curled as he continued, I have a condition. You really are interesting, needing a condition to make a bet. The silent Qing Yanluo on the side finally couldn't take it anymore, but she was stopped by Chu Qingyan. Chu Qingyan looked at him coldly. What condition? I missed the time when we fought. Unfortunately, there was no clear winner. Now, let's fight. If you win, I'll make a bet with you, Pang Huang said. Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes. What if you win? Leave Xiaosu and become my aide. Pang Huang smiled. It didn't seem like he was joking. Qing Yanluo was furious at Pang Huang's shameless boasting. Prince of Nansong, you're going too far. You want to make a bet with me, so I have a condition. Isn't this what you call returning the favor? It's up to me whether I want to make a bet, and it's up to you whether I want to make a bet. Isn't that fair? Pang Huang shrugged his shoulders nonchalantly, while the soldiers behind him began to clamor and clamor. Chu Qingyan patted Yanluo's shoulder and gave her a look that told her to calm down. Then she turned to look at Pang Huang. Her eyes were as clear as a stream, and her expression was calm. It was as if this was just a friendly exchange between two friends. All right, I'll agree to your condition. Qing Yanluo was anxious. She wanted to dissuade her, but when she saw Chu Qingyan's determined gaze, she swallowed her words. Young Master Chu is indeed a straightforward person. After you. Pang Huang smiled. Chu Qingyan's mouth twitched as she whispered to Jiang Yi before she walked up. Yanluo, I won't lose. You have to believe me. Qing Yanluo looked at her back and said firmly in her heart, Little girl, I believe you. Chapter 927. Chu Qingyan walked out of the crowd with a natural and unrestrained appearance. How do you want to compete? 2 out of 3 wins or what? When her voice fell, the soldiers on Pang Huang's side immediately began to discuss. Your Highness, taking down these people is a very simple matter, why do you want to waste time with them? That's right, maybe this person wants to play some trick. Your Highness, please reconsider. Pang Huang's ears were filled with noisy chatter. Pang Huang's stern gaze swept over everyone. Everyone felt his majesty and did not dare to speak. Do I need you to teach me how to be the crown prince? How about you take my position? Pang Huang's gaze was like a cold arrow. It was clear that he was angry. This general doesn't dare. They had already experienced the crown prince's methods during this time, so they retreated in fear, not saying anything else. Your men don't seem to agree, Chu Qingyan said coldly as she crossed her arms. Pang Huang smiled hearing this, the one competing with you is me, there is no need to care about unimportant people. Then he was silent for a moment before continuing, as long as you can take over 100 moves from me, it will be your win and it will be decided in 1 round. 100 moves. Chu Qingyan looked at him suspiciously. Back in the Fuli mountain range, she had exchanged a few moves with him and knew that his martial arts were very high. But she was personally taught by the ice block, so she wouldn't be too bad. That's right, if you can defeat me within 100 moves, it will be your win. Do you dare accept the challenge? Pang Huang looked at her with a burning gaze. Draw your sword. Chu Qingyan did not hesitate to draw the flexible sword at her waist, using her actions to answer his words. The silver sword could be soft or hard, releasing a dazzling white light under the sun. It shined on her face, showing her determination. Pang Huang gave an appreciative smile and pulled out his own weapon at the same time. Comparing notes, don't go too far. He emphasized. If it was a normal day, he would not say something like this. But the person in front of him made him want to cherish her talent from the start. Chu Qingyan did not respond because she did not dare guarantee that they would stop at that moment. The 2 armies retreated, making space for the 2 of them. One was the southern blue ghost crown prince, while the other was a Sichuan noble youth. Both of them were good-looking, and when they stood together, they were pleasing to the eye. However, at this moment, they were both domineering and arrogant, as if they were on the verge of exploding. Chu Qingyan did not want to waste any more time. Holding her sword horizontally, she quickly attacked Pang Huang. When she first learned leg techniques from 7-star and flowing lightness skill, she had a bold idea, which was to fuse leg techniques and lightness skill together. After she succeeded, she fused them together with her swordsmanship. Therefore, even though her internal energy wasn't the strongest, her swordsmanship was the fastest, and her dodging was second to none. Therefore, when Pang Huang saw her move with such momentum, he was stunned at first. He recalled that she had not used her full strength on the snowy mountain. However, his lips slowly curled up. Chu Yan, how many points of brilliance do you have? Show them all. When speed and swordsmanship were combined, it would result in twice the result with half the effort. When Pang Huang received her first move, he retreated a little, but he did not mind at all. He blocked her sword and used his strength to push it away. Chu Qingyan flipped in midair and waved her sword at him again. She went all out from the start, not to suppress him. She clearly knew that Pang Huang was a troublesome opponent. If she wanted to win, she had to attack him so intensely that he would not have time to react and reveal a flaw. This way, she would be able to seize the opportunity. Pang Huang countered every move, and he had always been in a passive state. In his impression, she was not a radical person, but at this moment, she seemed to be throwing caution to the wind, which made him have a faint guess in his heart. From an outsider's point of view, the two people's swordsmanship was very fast. If one did not have a certain level of martial arts, they would not be able to see the two people's movements. They would only feel that it was very powerful, which made the spectators unable to withstand the momentum and kept retreating. After the two people exchanged a move, Chu Qingyan retreated 2 steps and stood still. She was slightly panting, and at this time, her temples were already wet with sweat. Pang Huang's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. He had fought with so many people, and it was very rare for him to encounter such a seemingly disorderly, yet orderly fighting style. His phoenix eyes were full of power as he stared at the person standing in front of him. Her red clothes made her fair skin look handsome, and the sweat on her cheeks, under the sunlight, sparkled. For a moment, it made him dazed. It was as if he could not see the person in front of him clearly, leaving only a pair of clear eyes, swaying in front of him. The mountain breeze blew, bringing a cool and refreshing feeling. His eyes regained their clarity, and his lips hooked up, as he said with a smile that was not a smile. Chu Qingyan, do you still remember the words I said to you on Fuli Mountain? Chu Qingyan looked at his incomparably tough face and narrowed her eyes, trying to figure out the meaning of his words. I said before, I am a person who cherishes talent. As long as you are willing to leave Shaosu, I will give you endless glory and wealth. Pang Huang stared at her, as he said word by word, showing that he was serious. I will guarantee that you will not have to worry about food and clothing for the rest of your life, and endless glory and wealth. These words made Chu Qingyan recall that he had said the same thing to her before. Chu Qingyan was stunned by his persistence, but then she raised her eyebrows and lightly snorted at him, I am not a fickle person. What answer I gave you back then, it will still be the same answer today. She did not want to waste any more words. Just now, she had already caught the flaw in his moves, and without any explanation, she swung her sword forward. After being rejected by her again, Pang Huang was a little jealous of Shaosu. He actually had such a loyal subordinate by his side. When she attacked, he did not show any mercy. He raised his inner energy and stopped fighting her. She did not expect Pang Huang to suddenly change his moves, and she immediately changed her attack. Could it be that he had been holding back just now, and was saving up his strength to fight against her now? Pang Huang saw that she was a little weak, and his eyes were filled with arrogance as he mercilessly slashed at her. At this moment, even Cheng Yanluo, who was watching from the sidelines, could see that Chu Qingyan was gradually at a disadvantage, and her strength was falling short of her desire. She could not help but breathe as she stared at the two of them. She was anxious but had nowhere to vent her anxiety. In the blink of an eye, Pang Huang's fierce attack was right in front of her. She clenched the sword in her hand, and the sword light in front of her seemed to disappear. What appeared was the scenes she had experienced in the past few years. Laughter, anger, life and death. At this moment, if she retreated, she could still save her life, but the result would be her defeat. If she advanced, she would either fight for a chance or lose her life. However, she had no way out. Reality did not allow her to drag out an ignoble existence. Because she still had someone to protect. Chapter 928. She raised her sword and went forward. She gave it her all, not leaving any leeway. Once a person reached a dead end, the potential hidden in their body would be limitless. She always believed in it. Pang Huang already had victory in his hands. He thought that she would choose to retreat under such a dense and powerful attack. But when he saw the determination in her eyes, he couldn't help but be stunned. Smart people, from the perspective of seeking advantages and avoiding disadvantages, would not choose such a risky method. In his opinion, Chu Qingyan wasn't a stupid person. But when he met her cold and firm gaze, a sentence suddenly appeared in his heart, and that was that this person couldn't be treated like an ordinary person. Chu Qingyan, Xishuan and those people, are they really worth it for you to risk everything and cut off your path of retreat? The moment he waved his sword to kill, he suddenly became distracted. It was at this moment. Chu Qingyan stared at the place where he had revealed a flaw. Pang Huang came back to his senses, squinted his eyes, and received her sword move. Then, he channeled his inner strength and waved it away. The strong airflow caused everyone to unconsciously close their eyes. When they opened their eyes again, the two people were standing 5 to 6 steps away from each other. Whether it was the Sichuan soldiers or the Southern Sung soldiers, they all heaved a sigh of relief. The feeling of suffocation just now was like being choked by someone, unable to move. At this moment, the pressure on their bodies suddenly disappeared. It shouldn't be considered intact. Chu Qingyan looked at her own cracked flexible sword. Her gaze was cold, concealing the astonishment in her heart. Just now, when the two people's swords were facing each other, she seemed to feel that the opponent's moves had weakened. Was it unintentional, or was it intentional? At this moment, she couldn't help but look at him. Standing under the sun, the person's facial features were strong, but at this moment, his blue clothes were fluttering, and there was a faint smile on his face. At this moment, it gave people the illusion of being flirtatious. Pang Huang looked at the chipped sword in his hand and threw it away without any reluctance. His tone was leisurely as he said, "You win." Chu Qingyan was about to ask if he wanted to continue, but he took the initiative to speak first. She looked at him dumbfoundedly, her eyes filled with doubt. "Including that move just now, you've already exchanged over 100 moves with me. According to the rules, I've lost." Pang Huang looked at her in a relaxed manner. He wasn't a sore loser, so he admitted it without any burden. On the contrary, the soldiers behind him were somewhat indignant. They felt that their crown prince must have shown her mercy. Otherwise, with their crown prince's strength, she would have been defeated in a matter of minutes. Chu Qingyan was stunned. It turned out that they had already exchanged over 100 moves. She had been too focused just now and had forgotten to count. After she let out a sigh of relief, she felt a fishy taste in her throat. She frowned slightly and circulated her qi to suppress it. She smiled. She had finally gotten this opportunity. "Thank you for letting me win." She put away her sword and cupped her hands in return. Cheng Yanluo, who was trembling with fear, immediately went up to him. She said with both joy and fear, "Chu Yan, you're amazing. Do you know that I'm almost scared to death? If anything happens to you, how am I going to explain it to my family?" "It's fine. I already told you to believe me." Chu Qingyan returned a smile. Pang Huang sneered at her. "Don't be happy too early. You won this opportunity, but it doesn't mean you can win against me. In all these years, I've never lost a bet to anyone." Chu Qingyan smiled faintly. "Your Highness, I believe that those who have bet with you in the past all have the mentality of losing. Why is that? Because commoners don't fight with officials, and officials don't fight with nobles. This has been an unspoken rule since ancient times. Think about it, if you were to play chess with your imperial father, would you win or lose? Because of her words, Pang Huang couldn't hold back his smile. Is that so? It seems like you know a lot about it. Oh, no. I forgot that you guys don't know how to play chess. Chu Qingyan shrugged, looking as if she had just remembered. This caused the southern blue soldiers to glare at her. The corners of Pang Huang's eyes couldn't help but twitch. Although he didn't want to admit her fallacious reasoning, it still sounded reasonable. However, if he admitted it, he would feel uncomfortable. Less nonsense. What do you want to bet? Pang Huang couldn't wait for her to end this topic. Otherwise, if she continued, he would feel like he was asking for humiliation. Chu Qingyan spread her hands and stopped the topic. She looked over and said, Prince of Nansong, the bet I want to make with you is very simple. I'd like to hear the details. Pang Huang said. Let's bet on whether or not I can send the cattail grass back to Jiangning County under your nose. Chu Qingyan smiled faintly. Do you dare to bet? When these words came out, not only the southern blue soldiers, but even her own people couldn't hide their surprise and ridiculousness. Beside her, Qing Yanluo's eyes widened. She couldn't help but tug at her sleeve and whisper, Little girl, are you crazy? If they could do it, they wouldn't be here talking nonsense with these southern blue soldiers. Chu Qingyan patted the back of her hand comfortingly and replied, Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Qing Yanluo received her confidence. Although she was puzzled, she didn't ask any more questions. At this time, the only thing she could do was to trust her companions. Pang Huang took a while to digest the words he heard. However, he still looked at Chu Qingyan with a suspicious gaze. He said with a smile that wasn't a smile, Are you sure you want to bet with this? Are you sure you don't want to lose to me? Are you sure you don't really want to rely on me? These three confirmations made the soldiers behind him laugh unscrupulously. The other party's mocking and probing made the soldiers on her side angry, but they didn't dare to say anything. They were also a little shaken and began to doubt Chu Qingyan's motives. However, this didn't affect Chu Qingyan. Her expression was still calm, and her tone was provocative as she said, Then, does your highness dare to accept or not? Pang Huang slightly frowned because of her calmness. However, no matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure out how she could win the bet. He also couldn't figure out why she would make such an obvious bet. His intuition told him that there was something fishy going on. Logically, he should refuse. However, he didn't know why, but he wanted to see how she would end up. Sometimes, curiosity killed the cat. Curiosity was the first feeling a person would have when they were close to a stranger. Only with this feeling would they want to know more about that person. Therefore, when the overall situation was set, Pang Huang suddenly looked back and realized that he was interested in Chu Qingyan from the start. That was why things got out of hand later. All right. Pang Huang no longer hesitated and agreed with a smile, I look forward to your performance. Chu Qingyan's eyes sparkled. Good. In a moment, I hope your highness will accept defeat. When these words came out, the southern blue soldiers all sighed. Only the soldiers on Chu Qingyan's side looked at each other with apprehension. Chapter 929. At this time, Chu Qingyan said to Pang Huang, Your Highness, before we make the bet, this one needs to make some preparations. I hope you'll allow it. Pang Huang didn't stop her. She nodded at Pang Huang, then turned around and gathered everyone together, as if she was secretly plotting something. Pang Huang looked at their actions, his eyes full of doubt. At this time, the soldiers beside him began to debate. I don't know what this kid is doing. Your Highness, should we capture them now? What's there to worry about? They're like turtles in a jar, completely under our control. I don't think they'll be able to make any waves. The people beside him discussed animatedly, but Pang Huang remained indifferent. Soon, Chu Qingyan walked back and smiled, "Your Highness, you can begin." Hearing this, Pang Huang focused and said politely, "Please." Most of the people had the attitude of watching a show. In contrast, the Sichuan soldiers weren't as nervous as before. At this time, they all straightened their backs and looked at the Southern Blue Army with disdain. This made Pang Huang suddenly vigilant. A mysterious smile appeared on Chu Qingyan's face. Before Pang Huang could react, she turned sideways and placed her index finger and thumb by her mouth. Then, she lifted her head and blew a short, crisp whistle. At first, there wasn't any movement, so the people didn't think much of it. However, they soon heard the sound of something breaking through the air from afar. Pang Huang suddenly narrowed his eyes. He seemed to have thought of something and looked at the sky in disbelief. At this time, a large dark, black cloud flew over, covering a large part of the sky above them. "It's a flock of eagles!" Someone cried out in alarm. At this time, the black cloud was already whistling towards them. "Shoot the arrows, shoot the arrows!" Someone shouted. Xiao Hai didn't care about these stupid humans at all. It ordered the eagle flock to split into two groups, one using its huge body to block the Southern Blue Army. The other group reached out its claws and grabbed the baskets in the hands of hundreds of soldiers. Then, under the cover of the other eagles, it flew back into the sky with a whoosh sound. Chu Qingyan looked at Little C's cries above her head, indicating for her not to worry. Afterwards, she flew off in the direction of Jiangning County without looking back. Southern Blue's arrows simply couldn't hit the eagles that were already flying high in the sky. By the time everything had returned to normal, all that was left was a ground full of eagle feathers, as well as the sorry state of the Southern Blue soldiers. Everything had been accomplished. Chu Qingyan clapped her hands and turned to look at Pang Huang. Just as she was about to say something, she choked on her words when she saw how Pang Huang was covered in eagle feathers. This feeling of wanting to laugh but not being able to do so was too unbearable. Pang Huang's face darkened as he shook off the eagle's feathers on his body. Indeed, the kind of person raised the same kind of animal. Humans were loathsome, and even their pets were loathsome. After cleaning up, Pang Huang looked up at Chu Qingyan and saw hundreds of eyes staring at him. He suddenly smiled helplessly and said to Chu Qingyan, "I really underestimated you. You shouldn't think too highly of me. I'm afraid of getting fat." Chu Qingyan replied in a relaxed tone. Towards her teasing, he didn't continue. Instead, a layer of sharpness flashed through his proud and dark eyes. "Previously, when I heard that you had a flock of eagles by your side, I thought it was an exaggeration. Now that I've seen it, it really lives up to its reputation. You let me win." On this topic, she didn't want to talk too much. Under the heavens, there wasn't a second person who could tame the Fox clan and own an army of eagles. Unknowingly, there was a huge pressure on her. She didn't want to become the focus of others, because there was a saying in this world, an ordinary man is innocent, but possessing a jade ring becomes a crime. She didn't want to become the target of others' plundering in the future. Chu Qingyan circled back to the main topic. "Then, does your highness have any objections to the result of this bet?" Pang Huang stared at her. Ever since he was born, there wasn't a moment when he wasn't scheming against others, or being schemed against by others. However, in the end, he was always the one who controlled the situation and won. However, there wasn't a single time when someone else's scheme was so open and aboveboard, and he was also on guard against it. Yet, he lost so thoroughly that he couldn't even have any objections. This person, people could see through him, but also couldn't see through him. It was like looking at a flower through the fog. She was a flower, but also not a flower. "Chu Qingyan, you can be considered one of the few opponents I have. This time, I'm willing to accept my loss." After Pang Huang sighed with emotion, he magnanimously admitted it. "Your Highness the Crown Prince." At this time, the soldiers behind him came back to their senses from the attack of the eagles and protested one after another. Pang Huang raised his hand and calmly said, "I, Pang Huang, will do what I say." I will never go back on my words. You don't need to say anything more. The Southern Blue soldiers couldn't help but sigh dejectedly. On the other hand, Xishuan's side was cheering and celebrating. Although Chu Qingyan had always believed that he would admit defeat, when he personally admitted it, she couldn't help but sigh in relief. Pang Huang looked at Chu Qingyan, who was happily celebrating with her companions, and an indescribable emotion appeared in his eyes. This person was young, but had the courage, meticulousness, and intelligence that were rarely seen in ordinary people. In a deadlock situation, she was able to think of a way to break out of it in a short period of time. She was even able to arouse his interest in making a bet. In such an unfavorable time, place, and people, she had opened up another path of her own. If it weren't for her meticulous mind, her proficiency in calculation, and her extreme grasp of human weakness, it would be impossible for her to fight for survival in such an environment. Among the people he knew, there were very few people like her. Such a person, his initial interest in her wasn't in vain. However, after this life and death struggle, as well as the contest of wisdom, he was even more certain that if such a person couldn't be used by him, then he could only destroy her. He definitely couldn't keep her by Xiao Su's side. Because this person was an army. Chu Qingyan, before you leave, I have a question I want to ask, Pang Huang said very sincerely. After knowing that the other party was willing to fulfill his promise, and that Little Hai had already flown away with the life-saving herb, the matter on her mind was settled. Thus, Chu Qingyan very straightforwardly replied, ask away. Pang Huang asked with a smile, this time, Xiao Su was also poisoned. Chu Qingyan withdrew her smile and looked at him seriously. Your Highness, has anyone ever told you that you are very smart? Pang Huang had an expression of, as expected. If it weren't for Xiao Su being poisoned, she wouldn't have been so anxious and almost lost her composure. Many people have said that, but to receive praise from your mouth, I feel very honored. Once this was said, there was no need to be constrained by an answer. You are a very good opponent. If we hadn't met on the battlefield, perhaps we would have become friends, Chu Qingyan said in a regretful tone. If you are willing to give up on Xiao Su, my door here will always be open for you, Pang Huang said with a smile. Chu Qingyan was speechless at the seductive words that came out of his mouth every now and then. Chapter 930. At this moment, Cheng Yenlua was vigilantly watching Fang Yu and the others. At the same time, she urged Chu Qingyan in a low voice, afraid that these people would change their minds at the last minute. If that happened, they wouldn't be able to leave even if they wanted to. Seeing that it was already noon, Chu Qingyan cupped her hands and said to Pang Huang, the Green Mountains will not change, and the green waters will flow forever. I believe that we will meet again very soon. Perhaps because the outcome had already been decided, she didn't have anything to worry about. Her expression and tone were very casual, and Pang Huang couldn't help but take a few glances at her. I agree with that. Although I really want to talk to you more, I won't force you since you're so eager to return home. I'm willing to accept my loss. Please. To be honest, he had selfish motives for wanting her to stay, but everything that had happened today was beyond his control. He had to go back and make a long-term plan. Chu Qingyan nodded at him, then quickly prepared to leave with her people. Chu Qingyan. When she passed by Pang Huang, Chu Qingyan heard him calling her. She couldn't help but stop in her tracks and look at him in confusion. You're the first person to beat me, or rather, dare to beat me. I don't want to be your enemy. Even now, he still hadn't given up on persuading her to join his side. Chu Qingyan turned to look at him. If you don't want to be my enemy, it's very simple. Withdraw your troops back to your country and sign a contract that you won't invade Sichuan again. Then I'll be happy to sweep the snow, brew tea, brew wine, and chat with you about the world. When these words came out, both of them knew that it was impossible. Pang Huang chuckled and didn't say anything else. He waved his hand and ordered his men to clear a path for them to leave. Chu Qingyan left with her people without looking back. When Chu Qingyan's group disappeared at the entrance of the valley, one of the soldiers suggested, Your Highness, should we send people to pursue these people? This way, it won't be considered a violation of the bet. Pang Huang waved his hand. No need. Don't pursue a cornered enemy. The soldiers exchanged glances. One of them took a risk and asked, Your Highness, actually, we don't have to agree to their terms. We have the advantage in numbers. There's no need to take this risk. It's boring to fight and kill every day. It's not bad to relax occasionally. Pang Huang turned and walked back. Let's go back. Prepare for the next plan. When he walked out of the mountain pass, he saw a group of people who were about to leave on horseback. He looked at the young man on horseback whose red robes were like flames and whose hair was as black as ink. Suddenly, the image of her dashing forward without regard for her own safety flashed before his eyes. Facing the ferocious killing move, at that moment, he hesitated. Did he have to use all his strength to receive her attacks, and then watch her internal energy break through her meridians and die? Or should she concede? Although she had lost, he could still hear her infuriating voice. He hesitated, but in the end, he chose to dissolve the dense inner energy on the sword instead of fighting her head-on. Although he had lost, he did not regret it. Actually, thinking back to the situation back then, if he hadn't held back and fought her head-on, perhaps both of them would have been injured. At that time, she should have already calculated her own life and death. If he was injured, then they would still have a chance to live. They would fight to the death. This was a terrifying opponent, but at the same time, he was a respectable opponent, causing him to feel a sense of empathy. Pang Huang retracted his gaze and ordered the people beside him, Let's go. Status determined one's position. If he couldn't subdue her, then in the future, he could only draw his sword and meet her. Chu Qingyan and the others led their horses back. Not daring to delay, they went back the way they came. Little girl, you really made me see you in a new light again. Cheng Yenluo finally dared to take a breath when she sensed that no one was following them. Then, she tilted her head and rubbed her chin, teasing her. Chu Qingyan chuckled and said, It's just luck. Don't be modest. How can anyone be so lucky? Cheng Yenluo shook her head. She smiled. Actually, when people are highly nervous and have no way out, they will eliminate all distracting thoughts. Many things that they have heard or seen before will appear in their minds, but they didn't pay attention to them. For example, I suddenly remembered that Xiao Hai went to another place to rest before entering the valley. I also remembered that Big Ice Cube once told me that Pang Huang likes to bet with people. So, I linked all these unrelated things together and formed a trap. But I didn't expect that he would propose a condition. But that's normal. He's a suspicious person who doesn't like to be passive, so I went along with his wishes and made him let his guard down. She shrugged after she finished speaking, as if she had just fought a difficult battle. Cheng Yenluo looked at her for a long time before sighing faintly. Little girl, sometimes I wonder if you're too smart or I'm too stupid. Otherwise, how can there be such a huge gap between us? Chu Qingyan smiled. You can think of it as me being smart and you being too stupid. As soon as she finished speaking, Cheng Yenluo immediately rolled her eyes and laughed uncontrollably. Oh right, how did you know that he would really let us go? When she heard Pang Huang nod his head and let them go, she was shocked and had yet to recover from her previous domineering arrogance. The feeling of surviving a disaster was really something that she didn't want to experience a second time. Chu Qingyan was silent for a moment and then said, Although Pang Huang is ruthless and unpredictable, there's one thing that many people can't do. He's willing to accept defeat when he's willing to bet. He can do things in a shady way, but he won't go back on what he promised. That's why I dared to bet with him. In fact, in the beginning, she was still suspicious and worried that the rumors were false. But if she didn't try, they would definitely suffer a crushing defeat. But she chose to try. Even if the other party didn't admit it, she would accept it. If the other party was willing to admit defeat, it would be their chance to live. Fortunately, she had taken a gamble and won the bet. Pang Huang was really willing to keep his promise and let them go. After Chu Qingyan finished speaking, Cheng Yenluo suddenly fell silent. After a while, she spoke again, but her tone was not as relaxed as before. Little girl, at this moment, I suddenly understand Murongju's original intention. She didn't want Yenluo to suddenly lead the topic to the two of them, so she listened carefully, because she knew that what Yenluo needed at this moment was a tree hole to listen to her talk. During this period of time, when I've shouldered the responsibility, I can only put aside any important people or things. I finally understand one thing. On the battlefield, life and death are unpredictable. No one can guarantee that they can walk out alive. If it were me, I wouldn't dare to easily promise others the rest of their lives. Cheng Yenluo's tone was slightly melancholy and enlightened. Congratulations on thinking it through. Chu Qingyan smiled with curved eyes. Congratulations are fine. Why do you keep covering your mouth with your hand? Are you feeling nauseous? Cheng Yenluo had just finished teasing her when she saw blood seeping through her fingers. You're injured. Cheng Yenluo exclaimed in shock. Chapter 931. While Cheng Yenluo was panicking, Chu Qingyan stretched out her other hand to calm her. Yenluo, don't panic. I'm fine. What do you mean you're fine? Look at you. You're trembling. Come down quickly. I'll check your pulse to see if your injuries are serious. Cheng Yenluo reined in her horse and wanted to dismount. Yenluo, listen to me. When I was fighting with Pang Huang just now, I suffered some internal injuries, but they are not very serious. Don't make a fuss about it. Pang Huang might not have sent anyone after us, but we still have to be careful. Who knows if we might encounter enemy troops? I have to maintain the morale of the troops. Chu Qingyan tried to persuade her with reason. Cheng Yenluo was moved by her pleading. But can you hold on like this? Of course. It's not like I haven't been injured before. Don't worry, I can do it. Chu Qingyan wiped the scarlet blood from the corner of her mouth and put down her hand to give her a reassuring smile. When Cheng Yenluo saw her pale face, her heart clenched in pain. But she was right. They had to return to Jiangning County first. That was the most important thing. Her heart ached for this little girl who was so considerate of the big picture. Little girl, I think if I were Murongju and Xiao Su were you back then, I'd probably abandon Murongju and go to the battlefield with you. I finally understand how he felt back then. Cheng Yenluo pursed her lips, revealing a bitter smile. How could such an admirable and pitiful leader be left to face those ferocious and cruel enemies alone? I think Ethereal has been feeling guilty for all these years. The person he's most sorry to is you. Chu Qingyan smiled gently. Cheng Yenluo fell silent. Chu Qingyan held the reins and walked on the path lined with strange rocks. Her voice was soft but firm. Why do misunderstandings exist between people? It's because one party doesn't say the reason, and the other party doesn't listen to the explanation. Why do the feelings between two people grow fainter and fainter? It's because they've never put themselves in the other party's shoes and thought in their shoes. Thus, one day, if we stand in the other party's perspective, or if we fall into the other party's shoes, we might be able to understand what we couldn't understand back then. After hearing this, Cheng Yenluo's expression changed. She seemed to have thought things through. Based on what you've said, it seems like I'm being unreasonable. Hearing this threat, Chu Qingyan smiled and denied, you know I didn't mean that. Cheng Yenluo chuckled and said in relief, I can let go of the fact that he abandoned me, but there's one thing I have to be calculative about. If he continues to be so self-righteous, I can still live well without him. This is unforgivable. Chu Qingyan smiled and said nothing. She hoped that one day, she would be able to eat the wedding candy of these two enemies. At this moment, she was barely holding on. She raised her head and looked in the direction she came from. Big Ice Cube, I'll be back soon. Wait for me. The group hurriedly rushed back, not daring to delay. Jiangning County. Huoling, Fang Lu, and the other trusted aides of Xiao Su were pacing around the room like ants on a hot pan. Ethereal placed his hand on the wrist of the person lying on the bed. His brows were tightly knitted, but he didn't loosen his grip. Even when he finally withdrew his hand, he still looked helpless. Ethereal, what's wrong with Master? Why did he faint all of a sudden? Hualing was waiting impatiently at the side. When he saw him get up, he immediately grabbed him and asked. Ethereal's eyes were unfocused, his lips quivering. The poison has entered his internal organs. It's spreading at an extremely fast speed. It's already out of control. Hualing already had a bad feeling when he saw Ethereal's lifeless expression. When he heard this, he let go of Ethereal's shoulder and grabbed his hair with both hands. He said impatiently, how could this be? Didn't you say that after Master drank the medicine, the poison wouldn't act up for at least a day? How did it become so serious all of a sudden? I'm not sure either. When I came back after leaving for a while, I found that Master had fainted and the medicine had spilled all over the floor. If I knew earlier, I wouldn't have left. Young Master told me not to leave, so I shouldn't have left Master alone. Ethereal leaned against a pillar and fell into deep self-blame. Fang Lu quickly asked, then what is His Highness' situation right now? Ethereal covered his face with one hand and said in a pained and dejected voice, if there isn't an antidote, the poison will act up in at most 2 hours. Fang Lu froze in place, how could this be? Something can happen to His Highness. Hualing on the side slammed the pillar and said in a pained voice, I'm useless, I can't protect Master. If young Master was here, it would be good. Maybe he would have a way. Ethereal shook his head, other than the antidote, there is no other way. But at this time, young Master and the others can't come here so quickly. This round trip will take at least a day. Hualing looked at the person lying on the bed without any signs of life and his eyes turned red again. What Master wants the most right now is for young Master to be with him. If I knew earlier, I would have taken the mission of escorting him to pick herbs. That way, young Master wouldn't have left Master's side. But it's too late to say this. Fang Lu said with a sad expression. Hualing walked in front of Ethereal and grabbed his shoulder, Ethereal, no matter what method you use, you have to protect Master's life and hold on until the antidote comes back. Ethereal shook his head and his eyes filled with despair, I've already used all the methods I can. Could it be that we've really reached the end of the road? Hualing let go of his shoulder and took a few steps back. Only when he hit the table did he lower his head dejectedly. Everyone present was filled with grief. Watching their master's life fade bit by bit like this, it was like their hearts were being roasted over a fire. At this time, the cry of an eagle suddenly rang out. Everyone else was immersed in grief and only Hualing heard it. This sound, could it be that Xiao Hai is back? Hualing's eyes lit up as he ran out the door. When he arrived in the yard, he looked up to see the group of eagles circling in the sky as well as Xiao Hai, who quickly flew down when he saw him. He saw Xiao Hai holding a basket in his claws. When he approached him, Xiao Hai's claws let go and the basket fell onto him. At this time, Ethereal and the others also came out. When Ethereal's eyes fell onto Hualing's hand, he immediately ran over. He took out the herbs in the basket and was filled with joy, this is a cattail. Master can be saved. After saying this, Ethereal snatched the basket from Hualing's hand and wildly ran into the kitchen. At this time, the giant eagles that flew down behind Xiao Hai all brought down baskets. Hualing looked at the baskets that filled the yard in the blink of an eye and muttered, Master can be saved, Jiangning County citizens can be saved, and the soldiers can also be saved. After muttering to himself, Hualing immediately came back to his senses. Fang Lu, what are you in a daze for? Quickly have people send these herbs down and let Ethereal take care of it. Good, good, good. Fang Lu immediately shouted. Hualing looked at the group of eagles circling above his head and couldn't help revealing a grateful smile, the little princess really is Master's savior. Chapter 932. In the evening, the setting sun shone on the ground, but it was still a little hot. After drinking the antidote, Xiao Su slowly woke up. He opened his eyes, and after adjusting to the light, he turned to look at his subordinates, who had been in a state of excitement ever since he woke up. Master, you, Hualing, immediately send troops to the mountain valley to support Qing Yan. Xiao Su tried his best to prop himself up and prepared to sit up. When he heard everyone's words, he spoke without delay. Why? Huling was confused. This is a trap. Ayan is in danger. You have to move quickly. Xiao Su took a deep breath and spoke with his eyes erect. Although his voice was weak, his tone made it impossible for anyone to resist. Huling and Ethereal looked at each other, and a vague emotion was transmitted from their eyes. Ethereal spoke up, Master, the young master has returned. The poison in your body has also been cured. Xiao Su's entire body relaxed when he heard this. Have her come to see me now. This. Huling scratched his head, and his expression was a little awkward. Are you hiding something from this prince? Xiao Su frowned, and his tone was a little cold. Huling glanced at Ethereal and saw him sigh lightly. He knew that he couldn't hide this matter any longer, so he could only tell the truth. The young master has returned today, but she suffered some internal injuries. She's currently recuperating in her room. What exactly happened? Xiao Su's face darkened, and he looked at his subordinates with a burning gaze. Ethereal stepped forward and said, Yesterday, Master was suddenly on the verge of a poison outbreak. We were helpless, and at the critical moment, Xiao Hai came back with a flock of eagles, and at the same time brought the antidote. The young master and Xiao Yan arrived in Jiangning County this morning. When they returned, the young master found out that you were fine after the antidote. The young master forced himself to take a deep breath and fainted. I heard from Xiao Yan that they encountered the Southern Sung army in the valley. Thanks to the young master's quick thinking, they were able to return safely. Following that, Ethereal explained in detail how Qing Yan Luo and the others dealt with the Southern Sung army and successfully returned the herbs. When she was describing all of this, everyone present, except for Huling and the others, was full of admiration for Chu Qingyan. At such a young age, she was brave and resourceful. If it was an ordinary person, it would be very difficult to do so. He had expected the little fellow to be trapped, for it was a trap set up for him. He had thought of the worst, and blamed himself for missing the best time to save the little fellow. Now that they knew that she had returned safely, being injured was already the best outcome. However, looking at the way the two of them stammered about her injuries, it was easy to imagine how much effort the little fellow had expended this time to escape. Xiao Su sat up and got out of bed. Master, where are you going? Huling hurriedly stepped forward. Xiao Su raised his hand and said indifferently, This prince is going to see Ayan. But your body. As soon as Huling spoke, Ethereal stopped him. He shook his head at Huling, indicating for him not to interfere. Then, he turned to Xiao Su. Master, this subordinate will take you there. Xiao Su nodded, put on a coat, and got up to leave. Huling scratched his head and immediately followed. When Xiao Su entered the room, Qing Yan Luo was performing acupuncture on Chu Qingyan. Without waiting for Xiao Su to speak, Qing Yan Luo took the initiative to say without raising her head, her 5 viscera suffered a strong impact, causing her qi and blood to flow backward. However, there is no danger to her life. As long as she recuperates well and doesn't use martial arts for half a month, she will recover. At this point, Qing Yan Luo had finished putting away the needles. She packed up the medicine box and sighed with emotion, I'm afraid no one would believe that this is a girl. Her vitality is as tenacious as a cockroach. Such a delicate body, after so many years of tempering, is finally able to withstand beatings. She wasn't making fun of Xiao Su with these words. Instead, she sincerely admired and pitied such a smart and resilient little girl. She got up and said to the silent Xiao Su, she will wake up in an hour. I'll go out and decoct her medicine first. Xiao Su nodded. Qing Yan Luo was about to leave when she paused for a moment. With her back facing Xiao Su, she said softly, I think I will never forget in this lifetime. She knew that one step forward would lead to death, but she still rushed forward without hesitation and fought with her life on the line. Your Highness, you weren't there at that time, so you couldn't feel the impact. This little girl is convinced. After saying this, She smiled and left the room. Cheng Yanlua was a person who dared to love and hate. Perhaps it was because she had been practicing medicine for so many years and had experienced so many life and death situations that she had an indifferent attitude towards most of the people and things around her. It was hard to imagine that she would say something like this. Ethereal and Hualing looked at the pale-faced girl lying quietly on the bed at the same time. Then, they looked at each other and tacitly retreated. They closed the door and left this rare moment of peace to their two masters. Click, the door was closed. Xiao Su didn't immediately walk up. Instead, he quietly looked at the person lying on the bed. He didn't know how much time had passed, or perhaps it was only the blink of an eye. Many things flashed through his mind, and finally, it stopped at the haggard face in front of him. He slowly walked up and sat down on the chair. Then, he used his eyes to trace the person in front of him, as if he could engrave her into the depths of his memory. Ayan, I thought that if you stayed by my side, I would have enough power to protect you. Later on, you fell into danger again and again because of me. Only then did I realize that the one who was protected was me all along. His eyes were like water, and his voice was gentle as he looked at her. However, his heart seemed to be set off layers of waves that couldn't be calmed down for a long time. Our Ayan has grown up. You're doing better than me. It's because I'm not strong enough that you get injured time and time again. In the future, I will work harder so that you won't charge and break through enemy lines for me again. You won't be in a dilemma of life and death, and you won't feel despair again. Xiao Su said softly, as if he was saying it to her, but also as if he was saying it to himself. You don't need to hear these words. I will use my actions to fulfill my promise. Xiao Su reached out to help her brush away the loose hair on her forehead. His fingertips fell on her eyebrows, cheeks, and finally, he gently held her hand. At the moment when he fell into a coma, what he thought of the most was not the country, but the little girl in front of him. It turned out that he could lose anything, but the only thing he couldn't lose was her. In this life, he didn't have much. If even the heavens wanted to deprive him of this, he didn't know what he would do. In the room with the incense, time passed little by little. Quietly looking at a person like this, it was as if he could never get enough of it. In such a quiet room, her nose was filled with a familiar scent. Chu Qingyan tirelessly walked in her dream, as if there was something in front of her guiding her. She followed the voice in her heart and finally found the light exit. She tried her best to walk towards the light exit. The long curly butterfly wings trembled lightly, as if they were about to open in the next moment. Chapter 933. Chu Qingyan slowly opened her eyes and the darkness in front of her was gradually replaced by light. After a while, she adapted to the light and felt that there was someone beside her. She turned her head and a familiar face came into view. She smiled before saying anything. It was as if after a storm, she had finally welcomed the rainbow she had been waiting for. All her efforts had not been in vain. Xiao Su looked into her clear eyes and there were many things he wanted to say. At this moment, he finally calmed down after a stormy sea. In the future, don't act on your own. He sighed and there was a faint regret in his eyes. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but curl her lips. Big ice block, you're a little too much. I finally came back from the brink of death. Not only are your first words not good, but you're also lecturing me. Be careful or I'll get angry. Perhaps it was because after surviving a disaster and seeing the person he cared about sitting in front of him, he finally let go of the fear and anxiety in his heart. Although he was complaining, his voice was relaxed. She was just talking, but she didn't expect the big ice block in front of her to suddenly hug her. Before she could react, he tightened his arms as if he wanted to rub her into his bones and blood. I thought I was going to lose you. Fortunately, you came back. He couldn't forget the fear that filled his heart before he closed his eyes. That feeling of powerlessness and helplessness was like a black fog that trapped him inside, and he couldn't escape no matter how hard he tried. To be more precise, he almost lost her. This feeling was terrible and he didn't want to experience it a second time. She didn't know that he had already guessed Pang Huang's plan. During the time she was unconscious, she was in a state of panic and uneasiness. But from his actions at this moment, she could feel that he rarely revealed his emotions. She was surprised at first, but then she reached out and wrapped her arms around his neck. She didn't know why, but she felt that there was no need to say anything at this moment. Quietly accompanying him was better than anything else. Burying himself deep into her shoulder, he could feel the warmth of her body under his hands and smell the fragrance of her body. This was the only way he could truly feel that she was alive in front of him. After an unknown period of time, the two separated. Although Xiao Su's heart was still palpitating, he quickly regained his composure. Xian Mo's eyes were full of smiles. "Ian, after this incident, I've decided on something." "What?" She was still immersed in his embrace and hadn't come back to her senses. "This battle must end as soon as possible. We can't let it drag on any longer." His tone became firm. He didn't want to waste any more time. In the past, he didn't care about life and death when he was alone, but now it was different. He had a family to feed, and the battlefield was constantly changing. He couldn't put the little fellow in such a dangerous situation. Chu Qingyan nodded heavily. "I support you, but we can't rush for quick success. We have to plan everything thoroughly before we act." Xiao Su reached out and patted her head. "Of course." She smiled at him. Then she raised her doubts. "Big ice block, don't you think it's strange? It seems that many of our actions are under the enemy's eyes. We are in the open, and they are in the dark. We don't know what they are thinking, but they know what we are doing next." Xiao Su nodded. He frowned slightly. "This feeling is getting stronger and stronger in the past few days. I suspect that there is a mole among our people." Chu Qingyan glared. "I also have a feeling. Logically speaking, when we were preparing to cooperate with the enemy, even if the enemy guessed our plan, it's impossible for them to be so clear about our movements. Not only do they know when we sneak in at night, they also know our troop deployment. It's like a roundworm in our stomach. Every step, every pressure is accurate. This makes me suspect that the enemy has sneaked into our camp." Chu Qingyan's words caused Xiao Su's expression to become incomparably calm. But in the depths of his eyes, there was a strong killing intent. Once it's confirmed that there is a mole, then it's very possible that Xiao Ran's battle arrangements for the past 6 months are all under the enemy's control. Although Xiao Ran hadn't been in front of him for 4 years, he had taught Xiao Ran for a period of time. He clearly knew that this child had a certain talent in military arrangements. Even if Pang Huang had rich experience, Xiao Ran couldn't have lost so tragically and so quickly. Thinking about how the Southern Blue Army had taken over the past 6 months, Xiao Su was even more certain. "Big ice block, if there is an enemy in the camp, it's simply too scary," Chu Qingyan said in a low voice, frightened. Xiao Su's eyes deepened. Following that, his killing intent retreated. His hand lightly patted the thin blanket on her body. His tone was less sharp than before, and his gaze was as gentle as water. "You are injured now. Don't worry about this first. I will take care of it." Hearing him say this, Chu Qingyan nodded in relief. "Do you want to sleep for a while more?" Looking at her pale face, his heart slightly clenched. Chu Qingyan revealed a wronged expression. "I think I've already slept for the whole day. Don't let me sleep anymore. I haven't eaten properly for 2 days. Can you ask the kitchen to cook a bowl of hot and sour soup for me? You can eat it, but forget about the soup. Avoid it," he emphasized. Once these words came out, she could only give up on this thought. Her mouth was full of remorse. "Okay, didn't they say that sick people are the most important? Why do I feel like I don't have any human rights at all?" Xiao Su caressed her cheeks and shook his head helplessly. Then, he went out and ordered people to prepare food. The sound of him slowly walking out fell into her ears, making her feel exceptionally at ease. She slightly curved her lips into a satisfied smile. Finally, she could hold her head high and stand by his side without a guilty conscience. She could protect herself, and also protect the people she cared about. Love could make a person strong. When Xiao Su returned to the room, the person who was complaining about being hungry had fallen into a deep sleep again. This trip had exhausted all her energy. Xiao Su lowered his voice and walked to the bed. He reached out and tucked in the quilt. His gaze was as gentle as water. Go to sleep. Leave the rest to me. He smiled faintly and then walked out of the room. Master, the food is here. When Hualing saw his master, he immediately called out loudly. Unfortunately, his voice became softer and softer under his master's heavy gaze. Let the kitchen keep the food warm. When Ayan wakes up, send it over to her. By the way, tell Yen Luo that there are no servants here. Let her take care of Ayan. Xiao Su instructed. Hualing immediately shut up and complied. After a quarter of an hour, you and Turin stay in the conference hall. I have something for you to do. Xiao Su said faintly and turned to leave. Hualing stood upright solemnly. Yes. Looking at his master's hazy figure under the sunlight, Hualing had an illusion. Although his master's appearance was still cold and indifferent, in reality, he was becoming more and more like a normal person. He had 7 emotions and 6 desires, and knew how to be sad and happy. Good news. Chapter 934. A quarter of an hour later, Hualing and the others appeared in the conference hall. Xiao Su's gaze fell on Turin. You've recovered? Turin immediately cupped his hands. I drank the antidote soup. I'm fine now. Xiao Su nodded. Master, why are you looking for us? Fang Lu saw that there were only a few of them and couldn't help but ask. They weren't in a meeting right now, but looking at their master's expression, it seemed that something big had happened since he suddenly summoned them. Xiao Su glanced at the subordinates standing in front of him and said calmly, You were all personally trained by this king. You should know that the one thing this king cannot tolerate the most is someone playing tricks in the dark. Master, you mean that there's a mole in our army? Hualing immediately reacted. Xiao Su didn't nod or deny it. Currently, all the signs indicate that there's a mole hiding among us. The 3 of them looked at each other, their expressions very serious. Only the 3 of us are here today. Is it because everyone else is a suspect? Turin asked. Xiao Su nodded. Right now, we still don't know who has been leaking our whereabouts and plans. I asked you to come here to discuss how to find the mole. The 3 of them nodded. They all began to ponder. At this time, Turin seemed to have thought of something. His eyes flashed and he stood out first. The corners of his eyes raised as he said, Master, this subordinate has a plan. It's based on the method that the young master used to find the mole for the bank half a year ago. When the matter of the bank was brought up, Xiao Su and Hualing both understood tacitly and revealed faint smiles. Fang Lu didn't understand and couldn't help but ask, Turin, tell us. Like this, we can first release the news about our next step. Then, we can secretly observe and see who is secretly sending messages to the enemy. At this time, the enemy will be in the open while we are in the dark. Turin slowly explained. Fang Liuyan nodded. This plan is simple but very practical. I think it's pretty good. But now that we don't have a range, there are too many people who want to monitor. It's a bit difficult to operate. In response to Fang Lu's question, Hualing first raised his hand to get his attention, then said with a smile, You don't have to worry about this matter. Master has already arranged for people to investigate the suspicious people in the army. Also, you have to know that those who have access to orders and know about our movements are not small soldiers or generals. This is also why Master only called us and not those generals. Fang Lu slapped his head and came to a sudden realization. You're right. I was thinking too much. Seeing that the 3 of them were almost done discussing, Xiao Su made the final decision. Hualing, continue to pay attention to the movements of these generals. Find out what they did before these 2 orders. Also, send an order to Water Spirit. Within 3 days, I want to see the background of these people. Fang Lu, bring some people to the tower to replace Jin Xian. Have him return to Chu Ian's side. Don't let anyone near her room. The two accepted the order and left. When only Xiao Su and Turan were left in the room, Turan asked, Master, what does this subordinate need to do? Turan, what do you think of Jin Xian's performance these days? Xiao Su said calmly. Turan stilled at first. He didn't understand the meaning of his master's words. Master always spoke concisely and didn't say anything unnecessary. Mentioning Jin Xian, he must have his reasons. He thought seriously for a while and objectively evaluated, this child, Jin Xin, is very hardworking. This subordinate still remembers when the young princess took him in 4 years ago. He couldn't even last a few moves against this subordinate and the others. This subordinate can feel his unwillingness to fall behind others, but he won't be impatient, and he won't be in a hurry to succeed. This subordinate is very optimistic about him. He knows where his shortcomings are. In these few years, he has been constantly exploring and humbly asking for guidance from us subordinates. Before dawn, he has been practicing martial arts. When everyone is asleep, he is still practicing. It's hot and cold, but he hasn't missed a single day. Moreover, he doesn't fight or snatch, and is willing to be left behind. In him, this subordinate can see tenacity and patience. To be able to reach this stage at such a young age, in a few years, if he has a vast sky, he will definitely be able to carve out his own world. After Tu Ling finished speaking, he calmed himself down and looked at his master with a puzzled expression. Xiao Su listened carefully. Because of Turan's words, ripples appeared in his heart. Turan was the calmest among all his subordinates. Although he didn't speak much, his words were dignified, which was quite similar to his style. Jin Xian being able to get Turan's affirmation was within his expectations. However, to be able to get such a high affirmation from Turan was beyond his expectations. But this was also what he wanted. His purpose was to get an objective evaluation of Jin Xian through other people's eyes. Do you think Jin Xian has the ability to lead troops? As soon as he finished speaking, Turan, who was waiting for a reply nervously, looked at the person in front of him with surprise and joy. Was his master planning to put Jin Xian in an important position? He controlled his emotions and tried to make his tone as calm as possible. He replied fairly, this subordinate thinks that although Jin Xian is only 15 years old, his temperament is firm. He is more mature and steady than his peers. If he can be nurtured, he will definitely be an outstanding general. Jin Xian was not only the person beside the young consort, he was also their comrade who fought side by side. After so many years of being together, they had deliberately made things difficult for him at the beginning, but in the end, they had witnessed his improvement. Even the Shaolai cavalry, who were a group of people who were not easy to fit in, had already subconsciously accepted him. He could be considered as Jin Xian's half-master. He also hoped that Jin Xian would be able to stand out and no longer be behind others. Xiao Su was quiet for a moment. Then, under Turan's expectation, he raised a shallow smile. The army is currently in need of people. There are internal and external troubles. There are not many people who can be trusted. There are also not many people who can be put in an important position. At this time, we need to bring in some new blood and bring about a new direction. Only then can we slowly change this rotten and inflexible army formation. His imperial father used nearly 5 years of time to break up the army of generals that he had carefully selected and nurtured. His many years of hard work fell apart. This was not the most important thing. What was most important was that after his people were buried and demoted, there were empty military positions. Most of the factions in the imperial court, in order to divide these positions, sent people, but they did not have any real ability. Through these few battles, he saw through them at a glance. These people were no longer the brothers by his side in the past. They did not have the courage to fight, nor did they have the real experience to deal with the ever-changing situation on the battlefield. This was not a battlefield for him alone. Victory or defeat depended on this army, whether they were united, whether they were brave and hot-blooded. Therefore, this time, he wanted to completely change the blood of the three armies. But, before that, he needed to select people. As for Jean Xian, he was the first person he thought of. Chapter 935. Turin was pleasantly surprised, and his tone was somewhat excited. Master, this subordinate believes that if Jean Xian has the opportunity to develop, he will definitely become a cornerstone of the three armies. It's rare to see you admire someone so much. Xiao Su chuckled softly. Turin smiled and was a bit embarrassed. Perhaps I really do think of this kid as one of my own. All right, you're dismissed. Yes. At this time, a soldier entered and informed Chu Qingyan that she had woken up. Xiao Su looked out the window and saw that the sun was already setting. He walked towards her courtyard. Those who wanted to use her should at least consult with her. When he entered, she was frowning as she drank medicine. Every time he saw her drink medicine, it was as if she was being tortured. He couldn't help but smile, and the corners of his eyes curved as he admired her unspeakable suffering. Then, he took out a small box from his sleeve and handed it to her. What is this? She suddenly gulped it down and stuck her tongue out. She couldn't stand the numbness brought by the bitter taste. It's good medicine that can relieve your current pain. Xiao Su smiled calmly. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes. What she hated the most right now was good medicine. However, seeing that this small box was quite exquisite, she endured the bitter taste in her mouth and took it. Opening it, she saw that it was actually a few plums. In this kind of harsh environment, it was already good enough to be able to eat 3 full meals. To be able to see such a snack was simply too amazing. Where did you get this? She picked one up and stuffed it into her mouth, using its sweetness to dilute the bitterness in her mouth. Xiao Su sat down in front of her. I conjured it up. I think you just made it up. She snorted and picked up a plum and brought it to his mouth. He shook his head. She snorted again and put the plum into her mouth. He had asked his subordinates to find this box of candied plums. He knew that she would have to drink medicine for half a month. However, after Jiangning County was severely damaged, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to find some decent pastries. The three armies were all burly men, so they couldn't make those exquisite snacks. This small box of candied fruits would not be able to support her for half a month. Xiao Su looked at her happily eating a box of candied fruits. He suddenly felt that it would be difficult for him to satisfy her with such a small thing in the future. In the past, he had heard people say that money could buy everything in the world that could be measured by value. However, at this moment, he deeply felt that some things were ordinary and cheap. Sometimes, no matter how much money you spent, you could not buy them. He felt a deep sense of guilt. As Chu Qingyan ate, she noticed that the person in front of her seemed to be unusually silent. She couldn't help but raise her head. When she saw the deep emotions in his eyes, she couldn't help but be stunned. Thinking that he was worried about the upcoming battle, she couldn't help but smile softly. Big Ice Cube, tomorrow's matters are tomorrow's worries. Don't give yourself too much pressure. Xiao Su restrained the emotions in his eyes and stared at her. Seeing that her complexion was much better than before, he felt relieved and said, I have something to discuss with you. I'd like to hear the details. She put down the box and looked like she was listening attentively. The army is lacking people. I think that Jean Xian is a good candidate regardless of talent or martial arts. Are you willing to let him come out and try? Chu Qingyan blinked. You mean to let Jean Xian join the army? You can say that. Xiao Su nodded. A bright smile appeared on her face and she spoke quickly. This is a good suggestion. I have always felt that he is a rare talent. If he keeps staying by my side, he will be buried. Then I'll take it that you agree. Starting tomorrow, let him take over a portion of the soldiers. Xiao Su said. Chu Qingyan heard this and quickly waved her hand. No. I'm only saying whether to let him go or not. The person who makes the decision is not me. This matter needs to be asked for Jin Xian's opinion. I am a very democratic person. It all depends on his wishes. Xiao Su chuckled. Aren't you afraid that your democracy will spoil them? If they could be spoiled, they wouldn't have stayed by my side for so long. I'm not bad at judging people, okay? She couldn't help but refute. Okay, then I'll let Turan talk to him about this matter and let him choose for himself. He agreed. Chu Qingyan nodded heavily. Then she hugged his arm and acted coquettishly, asking him to accompany her for dinner. She knew that he hadn't eaten a single drop of rice today and had been busy with work, so she changed her method of asking him to eat first. Xiao Su asked someone to deliver the food and then called Turan over. He asked him to talk to Jin Xian about joining the army. Although Xiao Su was the commander-in-chief, the food was basically the same as the soldiers. Simple white water tofu, cornbread, pickled vegetables and porridge. During the march, food was very scarce. Even if they had enough now, they didn't dare to use too much. They were afraid that one day, they would be trapped, or the imperial court wouldn't be able to provide them in time. Eating steamed buns and eating pickled vegetables, the two of them didn't even frown. People who achieved great things could wear gold and jade clothes and not be arrogant people. They could also bury their heads in pickled vegetables and steamed buns and be indifferent. Xiao Su looked at the person in front of him who was eating steamed buns, and a soft light appeared in his eyes. If these foods were placed in front of the noble ladies in the capital, they would probably feel disgusted even by looking at them. However, his little fellow had the dignified elegance of a noble. She also sat on the ground and used the sky as her blanket and the earth as her bed. Such a woman was rarely seen in the world. It was a blessing in this life to be able to meet such a woman. At the end of the meal, Turan walked in with a strange expression. What did Jin Xian say? Chu Qingyan had just put down the bowl when she saw him. She couldn't help but ask with a smile. Turan glanced at his master, then lowered his head and sighed. Jin Xian said that he doesn't want to join the army. He only wants to stay by your side. Chu Qingyan was a little surprised. She turned to look at the person beside her and sighed. I didn't expect that the position by my side would be more attractive than following you. Xiao Su was speechless as he listened to the little fellow's voice. Then, what should we do now, masters? Turan felt that it was a pity that Jin Xian missed this opportunity. When Turan looked over, Chu Qingyan raised her hands and said, I'm an injured person. You can solve this matter yourselves. Whether or not you can persuade Jin Xian, you can only rely on yourselves. I can't risk my life to drive my people to your side. Xiao Su knew that she had already made the biggest concession. He muttered to himself for a moment, then said to Turan, ask Jin Xian to come to the study later. Turan accepted the order and retreated. At this time, Chu Qingyan rested her chin on her hands and looked at him with narrowed eyes. Does this count as poaching my people in front of me? Yes, but you've already acquiesced. Xiao Su glanced at her and said helplessly. All right, I'm very sad that I'm about to lose a trusted subordinate. Sorry, I didn't see it. Chu Qingyan snorted and planned to ignore him for 6 hours. Xiao Su laughed, but at this time, he was more focused on how to persuade Jin Xian. Chapter 936. After the door to the study was knocked on, it was pushed in from the outside. After Jin Xian stepped through the threshold, he turned around and closed the door. Then, he calmly walked in front of Xiao Su. I heard that you were looking for this subordinate. Xiao Su nodded. Turan should have already told you about this matter. This prince is looking for you precisely because of this matter. Your Highness, this subordinate has already stated that I don't have much desire to join the army. Therefore, this subordinate would like to thank your Highness for your high opinion and kindness. Jin Xian repeated what he had said to Turan before. These words didn't cause much of a change in Xiao Su's expression. His eyes indifferently looked at the youth in front of him. 15 years old was a hot-blooded youth. However, the Jin Xian in front of him was calm and collected. He had a steadiness that didn't match his age. He asked, "Can you tell me the reason why you don't want to join the army?" Although Jean Xian didn't know why His Highness suddenly wanted him to join the army, he followed his inner thoughts and answered truthfully, "Jean Xian doesn't have such a far-sighted idea. For example, I don't have such a strong sense of patriotism. This subordinate also doesn't value the people of the world as much as Your Highness does." These words sounded somewhat rebellious. However, compared to the words that went against one's heart, Xiao Su felt that these words were more to his liking. Jean Xian didn't deliberately observe Xiao Su's expression. He continued to follow his inner thoughts. Although this subordinate doesn't have such a broad mind to accommodate the world, and I don't value fame and fortune as much as you do, this subordinate has a belief in his heart that has never changed. That is, to stay by Master's side and protect her safety. In front of him, he said that he wouldn't leave his Ayan. Xiao Su's eyes flashed. He looked at Jean Xian with interest. He really has guts. However, he could tell that he still had a lot to say, so he continued to listen without batting an eyelid. Your Highness, my life was saved by Master. Even my ability to survive was given to me by Master. I have a debt of gratitude that I can't repay even with my life. Master, and you have a very special position in the depths of this dynasty. There are many people in the dark who are eyeing you covetously. I don't have any other skills, only martial arts and a fearless heart. I want to stay by Master's side and resist those demons and monsters for her. Jin Xin's words weren't very impassioned, nor did they move people's hearts. He simply and calmly explained the reason. Xiao Su was very satisfied with such a neither servile nor overbearing attitude. However, he was even more gratified that the little fellow had made the right decision to take him in. She had gained a loyal subordinate. He had to admit that the little guy had a good eye for people. Because from Jean Xian's speech and expression, he could tell that these words came from the bottom of his heart. Jean Xian, your words have surprised this prince, but I'm also very gratified. At the same time, I'm very grateful for your feelings towards Ayan. Xiao Su smiled faintly. Jean Xian replied, Your Highness, this is Jean Xian's decision. You don't have to say that. Xiao Su nodded. This person was able to remain unmoved by praise and humiliation. He was a talent. Jean Xian, you said that you want to stay by Ayan's side to protect her? Yes. Then if this prince said that there was a better chance to protect her than staying by her side, would you be willing to do it? Xiao Su slowly said. Jean Xian looked puzzled. The chance you're talking about is to enlist in the army? But this subordinate doesn't understand what this has to do with protecting Master. Xiao Su looked at him with a half-smile. That's right, enlisting in the army. If we're talking about the actual connection, it's not as obvious as it seems on the surface. However, it's better than staying by her side to protect her. These words successfully piqued Jean Xian's curiosity. Can Your Highness explain it more clearly? Xiao Su nodded. He stood up and walked to the windowsill. He turned to look at Jean Xian with his hands behind his back. His voice was as cold as falling snow. You're right. There's a group of people eyeing us covetously. They're hiding behind the scenes, constantly trying to kill us. However, for Ayan, your protection can only treat the symptoms and not the root cause. You can stop them for a while, but you can't stop them forever. Jean Xian fell silent. He couldn't refute His Highness's words, and they resonated in his heart. Jean Xian, do you know that the scariest thing in this world isn't open or covert attacks, but rather killing people without them noticing? Swords and knives can be dodged, but in most fights, it's not necessarily a fight on the surface. Martial strength is the worst strategy. Only a battle of wits is truly terrifying. Inside the window, Xiao Su stood with his hands behind his back. The bright moonlight fell on his hair and clothes. There was no sadness or joy in his eyes. He was too high to reach. When Jean Xian heard these words, he was a little startled. Although he understood the reasoning, he still couldn't understand what this had to do with him enlisting in the army. However, His Highness' godlike appearance made him unable to help but continue to listen. For Ayan, the true danger isn't on the battlefield, but after the war is over. This king hopes that you can grow up in the army and make a name for yourself. Then, you can enter the capital as an official and become Ayan's hidden strength. You can become her strongest shield and help her block those with bad intentions. Xiao Su calmly looked into Jean Xian's eyes and said these words. Just now, he had done so much foreshadowing in order to draw out the following words. At this time, he needed someone he could trust to be a general. At the same time, he needed Ayan to develop his strength. Otherwise, it would be too late. Once the war was over and he returned to the capital with glory, Ayan would no longer be like 5 years ago when she had no one to rely on in front of the nobles. Before he left the court, he had to ensure Ayan's safety. In the tangled and complicated political situation of Jingdo, Ayan needed to have her own connections and power. Only then could she be safe and worry-free in places he could not see or protect. Jean Xian was without a doubt the best choice. Jean Xian wasn't stupid. With just a few words, he understood Xiao Su's intentions. Does your highness mean for this subordinate to walk from behind the master's back to the stage? If this subordinate has a higher authority, he can better protect the master. That's right. What do you think? Xiao Su nodded. Your highness, do you really think this subordinate can do it? Jean Xian was a little unconfident. He had never thought about this question. Xiao Su smiled, you have to ask yourself. This prince and Ayan won't make the decision for you. You have a day to go back and think it over. Jean Xian was silent for a moment. Then, he knelt down and raised his head without hesitation, Your Highness, this subordinate can do it. Have you thought it through? Xiao Su looked at him steadily. This subordinate has thought it through very clearly. Your Highness, please make the arrangements for this subordinate. Jean Xian's tone was firm. If there was another way to repay his master, no matter how difficult or dangerous it was, he would try it. Xiao Su looked at him and finally smiled faintly, okay. This youth will definitely have a bright future. Chapter 937. By the time Xiao Su finished dealing with the military affairs, the full moon was already hanging high in the sky. He summoned someone to ask and found out that the little fellow was still awake. He muttered to himself for a moment, then took his coat and walked towards her courtyard. As soon as he entered, he was greeted with a dark face and a few angry gazes like their master. They thought that this was called being united against a common enemy. What followed was an aggressive denunciation of his crimes. Big Ice Cube, tell me honestly, how did you steal my man? Xiao Su couldn't help but laugh at this angry look, but he knew that laughing in this kind of situation would undoubtedly add fuel to the fire for her. He restrained his smile and sat down in front of her. Persuaded. I don't believe you. She raised her eyebrows. Jean Xian had been by her side for so many years, and she still didn't understand him. Although he usually didn't speak much, once he set his mind on something, even 9 bulls couldn't pull him back, so it was harder than ascending to heaven to persuade him. But in just 2 hours, he came to find her and said that he was willing to join the army. This made her very surprised, and she couldn't understand how he changed his mind in just one afternoon. After glutinous rice ball and the others were detoxified, they directly jumped into their master's room and cried, "Oh whoa." They complained about the hardships of the past few days, and then refused to leave. At this time, when they heard their master's words, they also howled at Xiao Su, protesting for their master. Xiao Su understood one thing, and that was, the kind of master raised the kind of pet. He smiled faintly and said, because under my persuasion, he felt that joining the army was more meaningful than staying by your side. I don't understand. She shook her head, and finally couldn't hide her curiosity and excitement. She grabbed his hand and asked, hurry up and teach me, so that I can steal your man in the future. Xiao Su smiled. Did she still need to steal his man? Everything he had, was hers. Reason with reason and move with emotion. He threw out these 8 words. Only a ghost would believe that. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes, expressing her serious doubts. Xiao Su shook his head and laughed. Didn't you support him to go out and try his luck? If you can't bear to part with him, I won't take him away from you. Chu Qingyan quickly waved her hands. That's not what I meant. I was just lying to you. I'm not reluctant. Logically speaking, he's not the kind of person who changes his mind easily. So I'm curious. What did you say to him? Jin Xian is a rare talent. He won't lose to any of the generals on the battlefield. As long as he is given the chance, he will perform brilliantly. After all, I am the one who brought him here. I have confidence in him. She knew that this was a time when the three armies needed people. She would not be so selfish. She also did not want to bury him. She respected his choice, whether it was for public or private reasons. Xiao Su's eyes shone brightly, and his tone carried a hint of joy. Ian, perhaps in the future, Jin Xian will bring you a surprise. Of course. She did not notice that he had changed the topic. She raised her head slightly and said proudly. That's why I'm handing him over to you. You have to train him well. It's okay to suffer hardships, but he can't be wronged. Of course, I also believe that he can do it well. All right. Xiao Su looked at her bright and beautiful smile. He really wanted time to stop at this moment, without the sword shadows in front of him, without the soldiers shedding blood in the future. He knew how important Jin Xian was to the little fellow, but he had to do this. He had to train a reserve force that belonged to her, so that she could stand firm in the future. Because at this moment, he could already foresee the storm of blood that would follow. If it wasn't for the appearance of the spy in the three armies, he would not have thought of using the people around her. There were dangers lurking around them. Some had already revealed their tales, and some were still deeply hidden. He had to prepare in advance to guard against all the sudden changes in the future. The two of them talked for a while. Chu Qingyan felt sleepy and drank the medicine. Under Xiao Su's watch, she fell asleep. Xiao Su sat by her side and accompanied her for a while until a subordinate came to report. He got up and gave some instructions to Glutinous Rice Ball and the others before leaving the room. When Xiao Su returned to the study, Hualing had already handed over the list of generals of the three armies. Master, this book is filled with the background of the generals of the three armies, as well as detailed information about their promotions and assignments. Xiao Su casually flipped through a few pages. What did you find? As Master expected, other than the old generals that you brought out, the others are all embroidered pillows. To be able to sit in this position, they either relied on nepotism or bought it with money. In these past few years, they have not done a single proper thing. The military power and the lives of the entire country's people are placed in their hands. This is truly shocking and infuriating. Hualing angrily spoke. He was so angry that his voice trembled. It was not only for the common people, but also for the brothers that fought side by side with him. Now, the number of embroidered pillows represented the number of brothers that these people had left behind. How could he not be angry? Xiao Su's eyes were deep as he closed the book. At the beginning, he was ordered by his imperial father to use the name of mining to root out corrupt officials. He originally thought that corruption and abuse of power mostly occurred in the capital and other places. He did not think that the situation at the border would be this serious. His imperial father, did he know to what extent the foundation of the world had been eroded? And, how is your investigation of these people going? Have you made any progress? Seeing his master's unfathomable expression, Hualing put away his emotions and reported his findings. Master, at present, most of the generals have been ruled out. There are still 5 people that this subordinate is not sure about, so I have ordered people to closely monitor them. Well done. We will take action soon. At that time, we can follow the vine to the melon and find the mole. Xiao Su nodded and continued, currently, there is one thing I need you to do. Master, please give the order. Hualing immediately replied. Announce to the outside that the 3 armies have been poisoned and that it will take some time to recover. Xiao Su said. Hua Ling understood tacitly. Master wanted to use this to make the enemy relax their vigilance. He immediately responded with a smile, this subordinate will do it now. Go. Xiao Su planned to walk back to the table. At this time, Hua Ling, who had walked to the door, remembered something and turned back. Master, the left minister sent someone to deliver a letter. This subordinate forgot to give it to you today. He took out the letter and handed it over. Xiao Su raised a brow. He took it and opened it. Reading 10 lines at a glance, he quickly scanned the contents. His lips curled into a mocking curve as he said coldly, he wants Ben Wang to arrange for his people to enter the army camp. Hua Ling's expression became angry when he heard this. Left Minister Darren knows that this place is already in deep water and still sends people to cause trouble for you. This is too much. Xiao Su casually threw the letter into the lantern. Watching the letter burn in the fire, his tone was calm as he said, no need to pay attention to it. Just focus on the war. He was not a chess piece in their hands. He would not let them control him without a temper. Hua Ling nodded heavily when he heard this. Chapter 938. The next morning, Chu Qingyan was already able to get out of bed and walk around. She had developed a good habit from years of practicing martial arts. Even if she was sick or injured, she would always wake up at that time. Thus, when the sun had just risen, she was already walking around the courtyard, accompanied by a few pets. Because Xiao Hai had brought back the herbs in time and saved the lives of Bai Yutong and the others, they were obedient in front of Xiao Hai and didn't quarrel with him. She wanted to laugh when she saw Xiao Hai holding his head high and the other 3 humbly following behind him. At this moment, a few soldiers entered the courtyard, carrying baskets and bags. They walked up to her. Little brother Chu, these things were sent here by the people of the city. They said they want to nourish your body and repay you for saving their lives, one of the soldiers said with a simple and honest smile. Chu Qingyan was a little surprised. Her gaze fell on the baskets. There were eggs, duck eggs, vegetables, melons, and chickens and ducks. Her gaze softened. You can return these things. Tell them that I appreciate their kindness, but I can't accept these things. The soldiers looked at each other awkwardly. One of them said, Little brother Chu, the people ran away faster than rabbits after stuffing these things to our brothers. I'm afraid it'll be difficult for us to find them. This, Chu Qingyan was also in a difficult position. At this moment, a voice sounded in the courtyard. Put these things in the kitchen. We can't let down the people's good intentions. The soldiers heaved a sigh of relief when they heard this and sent the things to the kitchen. Chu Qingyan turned to look at the person who had suddenly appeared. She said helplessly, that's not very good. Cheng Yenluo walked up to her and said calmly, what's not very good about it? You're injured now. If you don't nurse your body back to health, how can you kill more enemies on the battlefield? She patted Chu Qingyan's shoulder and said earnestly, you deserve it. From now on, they'll have to rely on you to protect them. The sooner you recover, the sooner you can rid the people of evil. This fallacious reasoning is quite convincing. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but laugh. Cheng Yenluo rolled her eyes at him. Chu Qingyan quickly changed the topic. Why are you here so early? How can it not be early? The moment you woke up, your big ice cube sent someone to wake me up. I'm a doctor, not a maid. Cheng Yenluo rolled her eyes even more. She pursed her lips and smiled. Big Ice Cube might be worried about my injuries. I'm fine here. Do you want to go back and sleep? Cheng Yenluo waved her hand. Forget it, forget it. I'll just take it that I owe you guys for the rest of my life. Ever since I met you guys, I've been homeless. I can't eat or sleep well. I'm used to it. Why does it sound so sad? Back then, who was the one who didn't want to be separated and kept following us? Chu Qingyan said with a smile. Now that the truth had been exposed, Cheng Yenluo reached out to pinch her cheeks angrily. Hey, hey, hey. Respect the old and cherish the young. Yes, yes, yes. You have to love me because I'm young. Chu Qingyan rescued her pitiful cheeks from Qing Yanluo's hands and said sarcastically. Qing Yanluo felt very defeated. Usually, she couldn't beat her in a fight. Now that she was injured, she couldn't win against her with words. The two of them sat down in the courtyard. Qing Yanluo looked at the artificial mountains, bridges, and rivers in the courtyard and sneered. The prefectural governor's manor is so luxurious and grand. It's obvious that this official has taken a lot of money from the people. Chu Qingyan scanned the surroundings. The scenery was indeed beautiful. She said indifferently, the prefectural governor of Jiangning County is a member of the Fu family. Just because he's from the capital, he's been arrogant and domineering in the past 3 years. He's a treacherous eunuch. How can there be peace when treacherous officials rule? Qing Yanluo was surprised. Speaking of which, how do you know so much? Chu Qingyan smiled. Over the past few years in Liancheng, I've been collecting interesting stories about the local customs and customs of the Sichuan. When I'm bored, I'll listen to these stories. She said it so casually as if it was easy to do, but Qing Yanluo knew that she had taken the trouble to remember these things so that she could use them one day for Xiaosu. She didn't know what she might need, so she did everything she could think of that would be useful. There were so many cities and so many officials in the Sichuan, but she could mention them so casually. It was obvious that she had put in a lot of effort. This made Qing Yanluo feel heartfelt admiration. Little girl, there's something that I haven't been able to figure out. What is it? Ask away. Chu Qingyan could vaguely sense the seriousness in Qing Yanluo's tone. She dismissed the idea of teasing her and asked seriously. What do you think is the most important thing when two people are together? Qing Yanluo's eyes were filled with confusion. She hadn't expected it to be related to this. Chu Qingyan smiled calmly and said, then what do you think is not important? Qing Yanluo was speechless. Chu Qingyan smiled and tilted her head to look at her. She said gently, actually, when two people decide to be together, there are many things that can't be determined if they are important or not at a specific time. Qing Yanluo was deep in thought. Chu Qingyan smiled faintly as she turned to look at the peach tree that had already borne small fruits. Slowly, she said, in my opinion, the most important thing is actually each other. Mutual respect, mutual trust, and mutual reliance are more important than anything else. Because no matter the time, these 3 things will work out for each other. Mutual respect, mutual trust, mutual reliance, Qing Yanluo recited silently in her heart. Then she laughed self-deprecatingly. Little girl, why does every ordinary sentence sound so philosophical when it comes from your mouth? Because I can turn something rotten into something magical. Chu Qingyan flattered herself without holding back. Qing Yanluo snorted. This time, it was Chu Qingyan's turn to ask a question. Speaking of which, you're not the kind of artistic youth who is sentimental. What's wrong with you today? Don't tell me you're still entangled with your brother Kong. Qing Yanluo's face stiffened and she hurriedly denied it. This has nothing to do with him. Don't think too much. Now that you mention it, I'm thinking more about it. Speaking of which, haven't you thought through many things? Why haven't you looked for him to undo the knot? Chu Qingyan looked at her curiously. He's been busy with detoxifying the entire city recently. Moreover, after knowing that the luo sha poison is infectious, he's been studying the toxicity of the luo sha poison day and night. Where would he find the time? At the mention of ethereal, Qing Yanluo's expression softened. This didn't escape Chu Qingyan's eyes. She couldn't help but smile. Time and tide wait for no man. You have to work hard and try to undo the knot between the two of you as soon as possible. If you don't like each other, then let go of the speedboat. If you still have feelings for each other, then don't let go of each other's hands. Otherwise, when you're old, you'll only be dreaming of the past in the middle of the night. Chu Qingyan placed her hand on the back of Qing Yanluo's hand and nodded gently with a smile. Why don't you look like a 15 or 16-year-old girl? Because I'm smart and mature. Love requires tolerance and courage. Yan Luo, please have the courage to take this first step. Chu Qingyan prayed silently in her heart. Chapter 939. Because her main task at this stage was to recuperate, all the work at hand was shared by Big Ice Cube. However, to suddenly become idle from a busy state, Chu Qingyan was very uncomfortable. So after having breakfast with Cheng Yanluo, she had nothing to do, so she decided to go to the study to look for him. When she entered the study, she saw Big Ice Cube frowning slightly as he read the official documents. She didn't disturb him, but chose to tiptoe to the bookshelf at the side, intending to find a book to pass the time. You're injured, so you should rest. You shouldn't read these tiresome books. When she came in, he had already noticed it, but he was analyzing a case book in his hand, so he let her find a place to squat. When he saw what she was holding, he couldn't help but remind her. Chu Qingyan looked at the cover. Although it was a bit profound, it didn't mean that she couldn't do anything after being injured. She couldn't help but protest, Big Ice Cube, think about it, don't you think it's too pitiful for a fish that's used to swimming to stay still and its nature is restrained? You mean you've become a fish now? After reading the letters for the whole morning, Xiao Su felt a dull headache. Coincidentally, the little fellow came and talked to her to relax. When he heard her theory, he couldn't help but find it funny and asked half-jokingly. Chu Qingyan glanced at him and decided not to discuss this topic with him. She planned to bury her head in the sea of books, but when she lowered her head, she suddenly thought of something. She touched her chin and looked at him doubtfully. Big Ice Cube, there's something I find very strange. Not many people should know that I went out of the city to look for the antidote herbs. How come it's only been a day and the people in the city know? Could it be that it's the work of a spy? Xiao Su smiled when he heard this. He knew that the people sent fruits and vegetables today. No need to guess, I asked Wuling and the others to do it. Ah. Why? People want to do good deeds silently without leaving a name. She expressed her surprise. You don't need to know the reason. The most important thing now is for you to recover from your injuries. Xiao Su's eyes flashed with a dark light, which was hidden in the depths of his eyes without leaving a trace. Even if I don't say anything, Little C's return with the eagles should have caused quite a stir. If you want to know, you can ask around. She thought that Big Ice Cube had his reasons for doing things. It didn't matter if she didn't know. If anyone in this world could harm her, only her parents and Big Ice Cube wouldn't. She firmly believed this. Xiao Su looked at her trusting eyes, and the corners of his mouth curled up a little. But when he thought of the purpose of doing this, his lips couldn't help but purse into a line. In the past few days, when the other soldiers reported the situation to the imperial court, they more or less mentioned the little fellow. In addition, the little fellow was already a little famous in Lian City. His father, the emperor, had been indirectly asking about the little fellow in his letters these days. This made him feel a little uncomfortable. Imperial father was suspicious. The matter of the little fellow dressing up as a man would be exposed sooner or later. If it came to the end, then he would spread the news of the little fellow's deeds and give her prestige among the people. At that time, even if the people in the court wanted to touch her, they would have to consider the opinions of the people. This way, she would have an extra layer of protection. But these matters were left to him to deal with. She didn't need to know so much at this time. She had already taken on a heavy responsibility that she shouldn't have taken on at her age, so he didn't want to add more burden to her. Although Xiao Su took away her military affairs, she still had to take care of the business in Jiangnan. So, Chu Qingyan coaxed and pestered Xiao Su until he finally agreed to add an extra table in his study. One person handled the military affairs, and the other handled the accounts. They didn't interfere with each other, but they were very harmonious. However, in another corner, they didn't interfere with each other, but they met domineeringly. Half an hour ago. After hearing Chu Qingyan's words, Cheng Yanluo suddenly felt a burst of courage in her heart. After leaving the courtyard, she turned around and walked towards the courtyard where the wounded were treated. However, she didn't find anyone. When she learned that Ethereal went out to the west of the city early in the morning with a medicine box, she rushed there without stopping. It had been a long time since she had the urge to appear in front of someone immediately. She was anxious, but at the same time, she felt as if her heart was enveloped by a ball of warm light, filling her up. Ever since he left in a hurry that year, she hadn't experienced this kind of sweet and sour expectation. Because there were soldiers patrolling everywhere in the city, she asked around. However, everywhere she went, she was told that he had already left. Little by little, she found out about his whereabouts. The desire to see him grew stronger and stronger. It was as if she had returned to that year, when she searched the entire sect just to ask him about the use of a medicinal herb. She dashed through the crowd, searching for alleys. She was like a butterfly, fluttering non-stop. The sun's scorching rays shone on her body, causing her whole body to emit steam. She felt her cheeks burning, but she didn't care. At this time, she was standing at a crossroad, hesitating about which direction to go. Suddenly, she heard a clear child's voice. "Brother Ethereal, you said that this herb has the effect of clearing heat and detoxifying poison, right? Then can I bring it home and cook it for my mother?" "You can." The clear voice of the wind was like a clear spring, bringing a trace of coolness to this hot and dry weather. Cheng Yanluo suddenly turned her head. In the corner of a dilapidated wall, she saw a person bending down to explain the effects of medicinal herbs to a child. Although in this dilapidated landscape, he was dressed in plain clothes without any ornaments. But in her eyes, he was more dazzling than when he was dressed in fine clothes. This one glance made her feel as if she had returned to the past. In those years when she was in the sect, medical practitioners, especially those who advocated doing good deeds, were generally charitable. They rarely collected medical fees. They didn't collect money from the poor, the lonely, the old, the weak, and the disabled. As a result, they lived in poverty for those few years. But they didn't care about food and clothing. As long as they ate enough and wore warm clothes, whether it was simple tea and simple meals or coarse linen clothes, they lived comfortably and contentedly. This scene evoked the buried memories in her heart. She couldn't help but walk towards him. When she was 3 steps behind him, she came back to her senses. But at this time, she didn't have the slightest intention of shrinking back. Time waits for no man. She didn't know when she would have this kind of courage again. "Brother Ethereal, there's a beautiful big sister looking at you." The child pointed behind Ethereal and smiled innocently. Ethereal was still focused on the herb. Hearing the child's words, he was puzzled. Then, he turned around and looked in the direction of the child's finger. Under the plain clothes and flowers, there was a clear gaze. He stood in place, stunned. Little Yen. Chapter 940. She couldn't help but call out softly. Surprise, delight, and excitement flashed across Ethereal's eyes. However, a gust of wind blew over, dispersing the gentleness in his eyes and taking away the warmth from his body. She was about to walk up to him, but when she met his distant and cold gaze, she stopped in her tracks. She had clearly felt his joy when he saw her, but in the blink of an eye, it had turned into an illusion. "Xiaoyan, what are you doing here?" Ethereal smiled faintly. His tone wasn't warm, as though he had met an ordinary friend. There were many things she wanted to say, but at this moment, she felt as though someone was strangling her throat. She couldn't utter a single word. She pursed her lips and quickly said, "I heard from them that you were here for a volunteer medical consultation. I was afraid that you would be too busy, so I came out to take a look. Anyway, I have nothing better to do." Ethereal's gaze swept across her empty hands. He knew that she was lying. After interacting with her for so long, whenever she lied, her right thumb and index finger would subconsciously pinch her left index finger. Although he didn't know why she would make up such a lie, he wouldn't expose her, just like in the past. "It's about time. We can go back after visiting one more clinic. If you have something to do, you can go ahead." He still smiled politely. Cheng Yanluo was stunned. Her pupils constricted. Something seemed to be wrong. Yes, the way he looked at her just now wasn't as affectionate as before. There was only coldness, as though he was talking to a familiar stranger. Why did he suddenly become like this? She couldn't figure it out. At this moment, Ethereal was about to turn around and leave. In a moment of impulse, she rushed in front of him and blocked his way. Xiaoyan, is there anything else? Ethereal's eyes flashed with surprise, but he quickly calmed down. I have something to say to you. She ignored the unfamiliarity that Ethereal gave her and mustered the courage to look him in the eye. Ethereal looked away. Okay, go ahead. She opened her mouth, but it was as if she was stuck. She didn't know where to start. If it's not important, we can talk about it next time. Ethereal had a feeling that what she wanted to say would change the decision he made in the past few days. After saying this, he did not hesitate to walk past her. It's very important, she said hurriedly. He stopped in his tracks. She walked back to him and raised her head. Her eyes were filled with determination. Murong, I've thought about a lot of things while I was with the army. I thought about our days in the sect. I thought about you telling me that you were going to leave. I thought about the years I spent alone after you left. I've been thinking about these memories over the past few years when you weren't around. At that time, every time I thought about it, I hated you. I felt that you were the one who destroyed our beautiful past and our hopes for the future with your own hands. But now, I'm thinking about how you've been living without me by your side for the past few years. When she said this, tears flashed in her eyes. She closed her eyes. When she opened her mouth to speak, she suddenly realized that it wasn't that difficult to express her thoughts. She let go of her tense emotions and continued speaking calmly. After going through these battles, I realized that you've been living a hard life these past few years. It hasn't been easy. I can understand how you felt when you made this decision. Only when a person was in a situation could they truly think from another's perspective. If it was me, perhaps I would have made the same decision as you. But you're more righteous than I am, more responsible than I am. Although I've resented you and hated you for so many years, at this time, I realize that personal love and hate are far too insignificant when compared to family, country, world, life and death. Kong Ling looked at her in astonishment. He never thought that he would hear such words from her mouth. He thought that he would never hear such words again in his life. His heart was like a surging wave, tumbling, surging violently into his entire heart. She looked at him with self-reproach. Murong, I'm sorry. I'm too selfish. I'm still living in the past. I don't want to break free and live a good life with you. I only think about my own grievances. Although I can't forgive you for abandoning me back then, at this moment, I don't want to lie to myself anymore. She paused when she said this, and her empty heart suddenly jumped. She stared at her. In the years when you weren't around, I never stopped thinking about you. In the years when we were reunited, I never let go of my feelings for you. These two sentences were like violent thunder exploding in his ears. He felt as if his legs were floating, as if he was dreaming. It turned out that Xiao Yan was just like him. His heart was enveloped by a warm current, and he was wild with joy. He moved his lips, wanting to say something, but the words seemed to be stuck in his throat. A thought appeared in his mind, instantly extinguishing this warm current and freezing it into ice. At this moment, Cheng Yanluo didn't notice the change in his expression. She gathered the remaining courage in her heart and threw caution to the wind. Murong, I want to give our future a chance to start afresh. Are you willing to do it? She gathered what little courage she had left and said these words with difficulty and straightforwardness. She knew that most women were too shy to boldly express their love, but she never felt that taking the initiative was wrong. If she felt that this person was the only one in this life, it didn't matter if she lost a little face. She could make him lose it back in the future and call it even. However, these words seemed to dissipate in the air. They were silent and didn't receive any response. She couldn't help but look up at him. What greeted her eyes was his calm and cold appearance. Her heart subconsciously clenched. At this moment, she heard him speak. Xiaoyan, I'm very surprised, but at the same time, I'm very happy that you're so honest with me. Thank you for understanding me. She stared at him fixedly. But I'm very sorry. I might not be able to continue being with you. Ethereal lowered his eyes and didn't look at her. He said each word slowly and unhurriedly. He felt as if his heart was being cut into pieces, but on the surface, he still looked calm and composed. Why? She widened her eyes in disbelief. When a person no longer wants to spend the rest of their life with another person, what do you think is the reason? Ethereal didn't answer her question directly. Why? Because he didn't love her anymore. Cheng Yanluo bit her lip and looked at him with reddened eyes. Do you mean that I don't have a place in your heart anymore? Yes, he replied with pursed lips. In an instant, the world fell apart. She couldn't see anything else in front of her anymore. Only his words echoed clearly and resolutely in her ears. Time has worn away my feelings for you. I can't continue being with you. I'm sorry, Xiaoyan. I'm sorry, Xiaoyan. He said sorrowfully in his heart. Chapter 941. Murong, do you know what you're saying? Cheng Yanluo looked at him and murmured. Disbelief was written all over her face. Ethereal felt as if a knife had been twisted in his heart when he heard her sorrowful question. However, he heard his own cold and heartless reply. Xiao Yan, although I've been very guilty of hurting you these past few years, I've traveled extensively these past few years. I rarely think about those days when we were in the sect. My impression of you is still stuck in the past. After so many years, we've both changed. I'm no longer the eldest senior brother in your heart. In the past, I was merciful when I practiced medicine to save people. Now, my hands are stained with blood. I've already broken the oath I made to the sect. If we still treat each other as the one in our memories, then we'll live a very painful life. If that's the case, why don't we let go of each other as soon as possible? Cheng Yanluo couldn't help but take 2 steps back. She felt as if she was about to lose her balance. She finally mustered up the courage to take a step toward him, but this was the response she got. I don't remember the past anymore. You're no longer the person I like. We walk different paths, so we can't work together. After saying so much, he just wanted to express this cruel meaning. She felt as if countless tiny needles were pricking her heart. It was so painful that she felt numb. If she had been the same as before, she would have slapped him and turned to leave, leaving him with a cool and unrestrained back view. However, at this moment, her feet seemed to be nailed to the ground. She wanted to turn around, but she couldn't. In front of outsiders, she was so resolute, so strong, and so indifferent. However, it was because the person who hurt her didn't matter to her. However, in front of her lover, the sturdy armor was like a bubble that would burst at the slightest touch. Then, after so many years, why are you still so concerned about me? She looked at him in a daze. There was a voice in her heart that told her to turn around and leave. That way, her heart wouldn't hurt anymore. However, she still wanted to ask. She wasn't afraid of losing face. She just wanted to know the truth. It's because I feel like I owe you something. I wasted your youth and didn't make you happy. Instead, I made you sad again and again. I blame myself, so I want to make it up to you. He looked into her eyes and apologized sincerely. Cheng Yanluo chuckled as if she found it funny. She seemed to be mocking herself. Her voice trembled as she looked at him sadly. Murong, do you think I'm the kind of person who needs others to make it up to me? You know what I want. Her eyes were too clear, so clear that he could clearly see the unreserved love in them. He didn't dare to look directly into her eyes, so he looked away and advised her. Yan, don't always live in the past. It'll be very painful. I've already gotten over it. I hope you can start over too. Could. Why? The person was clearly the same person, but she couldn't understand a single word that came out of his mouth. Don't panic, Yen Luo. Ask him clearly. She held his hand tightly. Cut off all paths of retreat, disregarding everything else. Murong, I only have one question for you. He looked at her. If my heart was still the same, would you still want me? Ethereal's eyes were gloomy. The sun was so dazzling that it made one's eyes ache. Xiaoyan, I'm sorry. He didn't know what else to say. Cheng Yanluo looked up at the scorching sun. Her mind was in a daze. Was the sun so bright that she was hallucinating? Or was she in a dream? Why was it like this? I don't want to hear your apology. You didn't do anything wrong. What you've heard today, just treat it as a moment of confusion on my part. After today, just forget about it. She no longer knew what kind of mood she should have when facing him. Xiaoyan, the battlefield isn't as simple as you think. Go back to Jiangnan. Okay. When Qing Yan recovers, I won't stay and be an eyesore to you. His heart finally relaxed, but the bitterness in his mouth was unbearable. He pursed his lips and continued to smile. Although we can't be lovers, you're still my junior sister. You're my closest friend in this world. She looked at him again, the light in her eyes disappearing bit by bit. There was no greater sorrow than a dead heart. She tried to smile. If we can't help each other in times of need, let's forget about each other. If the current her wasn't immersed in immense pain, she would have noticed the trembling and emptiness in the voice of the person in front of her. She would have also noticed the blood flowing from the wounds on the hands that were tightly gripping the medicinal herbs. Okay. He tried his best to smile back at her. Cheng Yanluo smiled faintly, but there was no joy in her eyes. She turned around and walked down the busy street like a ghost. Although there was a lot of noise around her, she felt as if all the noise had faded away. She was the only one left in this world. Little girl, I've tried my best, but he doesn't care about me anymore. The tears that she had been holding back finally flowed down her face. Kong Ling watched as her figure slowly disappeared into the sea of people. The smile on his face disappeared bit by bit, and the pain he felt was like an endless darkness shrouding him. He felt someone tugging at his sleeve. He looked down. It was the child from earlier. You're not home yet? I'll be home soon. Brother Ethereal, don't you like that beautiful sister? The child asked curiously. No, I like her very much. He smiled sadly. Then why did you say those hurtful words to that beautiful sister? The child was puzzled. Because I want to protect her. I want to keep her away from danger. Although he was against it when she was with the army, he couldn't deny that his heart was at peace with her by his side. He didn't have any fear on the line between life and death. However, when they were trapped in the Southern Sung army while picking herbs this time, he recognized a fact very clearly. If she continued to stay here, her life would be in danger and he wouldn't be able to protect her. This picking of herbs was a wake-up call for him. He wouldn't be so lucky to escape every time. He had to harden his heart and push her away, even if it was against his will. Brother, I don't understand. The child scratched his head. At this moment, thunder rumbled and dark clouds covered the sky. He raised his hand and patted the child's head. You'll understand when you grow up. But I hope you won't experience this pain. It's going to rain. Go back quickly. The child smiled and nodded. Then, he jogged away. But before he entered the alley, he turned back to look at that handsome big brother. The child felt that this big brother seemed to be very sad, very sad. Ethereal's footsteps were light as he walked aimlessly in the opposite direction of her. The pitter-patter of rain fell from the sky and landed on his body. The raindrops stuck to his eyelashes like sparkling and translucent tears. Xiao Yan, this time, there's no turning back. Chapter 942. In the blink of an eye, the rain had turned into a downpour. Chu Qingyan listened to the rumbling thunder outside the window. Her heart trembled with fear as she watched the rain fall outside. When Xiao Su put down the letter in his hand, he saw her frowning. What's wrong? I heard that Yen Luo went out alone in the afternoon and never came back. I'm a little worried. The heavy rain drifted in. She reached out to close the window to block out the noise outside. Then, she walked to the side and sat down. She went to look for Ethereal. Xiao Su raised his brows. Chu Qingyan blinked. How did you know? It's a normal deduction. He pointed a finger at his head and lightly said, This morning, Kongling came to invite you to go out for a volunteer medical consultation and I allowed it. Miss Qing usually doesn't leave the house, so if you suddenly go out, you'll know the answer. He had guessed it based on these small details. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but feel impressed. She propped her chin up with one hand and said, I heard from the soldiers that Yen Luo was looking for Ethereal in a hurry. I wasn't worried at first, but when I saw the rain outside, I was a little worried. These two are older than you and have eaten more salt than you have rice. You don't have to worry about them, Xiao Su said casually. Although she said that, she didn't know why, but she still felt worried. A soldier came in, but Xiao Su didn't have time to care about her. He continued to work. Chu Qingyan sat for a while longer, but she could no longer continue reading the book in her hand. She closed the book and summoned a soldier in. Are Ethereal and Yen Luo back? Mr. Ethereal is back, but Miss Qing isn't back yet, the soldier replied. What? Chu Qingyan stood up in shock. Ethereal was back, so why wasn't she back yet? She seemed to have thought of something. She didn't have time to tell Big Ice Cube and immediately left. Thunder rumbled outside, and the rain seemed to be getting heavier. The pitter-patter of raindrops that were as big as beans smashed against the eaves as if they were hitting her heart. She couldn't help but recall what she had said to Yen Luo this morning. She wondered what had happened between the two of them when Yen Luo went to look for Ethereal. She couldn't care less. She summoned people to look for Yen Luo and informed Ethereal. She was unfamiliar with this place, so where could she go? Just as she was about to lead her men out of the door, a figure appeared in the misty rain. Chu Qingyan sucked in a deep breath when she saw the person who was slowly walking over. Raindrops rolled down his black hair, and his clothes were soaked, but he didn't realize it. He wandered around like a walking corpse. His eyes were lifeless, as if he had lost his soul. It was as if he had lost all signs of life. Chu Qingyan couldn't believe that the person in front of her was the lively woman who had quarreled with her this morning. Cheng Yenluo walked on in a daze. She had no idea where she was. She only knew that she had walked for a long time, but she couldn't find the end. It was just like her feelings for Murongju. When they were in love, or when they were separated, she couldn't find him. She couldn't figure out his thoughts, so she had been in a state of disappointment for so long. She didn't even know when he fell in love with her and when he lost his feelings for her. There had always been a vast fog between them, so she could never see him clearly. For so many years, she had been looking for him all the time. When she couldn't find him, she was helpless. When she found him, she was afraid that he would disappear again. He suddenly turned around and walked through the fog to stand in front of her. Although we can't be lovers, you're still my junior sister. You're my closest friend in this world. Women were insecure. In fact, as long as the other party gave them a promise, they would feel at ease. However, he had never been willing to give her this promise. When she heard him say that, she seemed to have found the answer. It turned out that his feelings for her were like rainwater. No matter how sentimental it was when it fell from the sky, it would fall apart when it hit the ground, leaving nothing behind. At this moment, the rain that fell on her body had lessened. She couldn't help but look up at the person in front of her. She smiled gently. Little girl, I listened to you and told him. At this moment, Chu Qingyan was holding an umbrella to shield the two of them. Seeing her in such a sorry state, her heart ached. You're very brave. Cheng Yenluo smiled and said, but he said that he doesn't want me anymore. Chu Qingyan was stunned. How could this be? However, no matter how many questions she had, she couldn't help but tear up when she saw her smiling brightly even though she was obviously heartbroken. Yenluo, don't smile. If you're sad, cry it out. I think I've been crying for a whole day. There are no more tears left. She laughed and laughed until tears came out of her eyes. She couldn't help but lean closer to Chu Qingyan's shoulder and hug her. She said softly, "Little girl, my heart hurts so much." After saying this, she couldn't help but burst into tears. A wave of sadness filled Chu Qingyan's heart. What kind of emotional pain could cause such a strong and independent girl to be in such pain? Yenluo, it's my fault. I shouldn't have asked you to look for Ethereal. Seeing her like this, Chu Qingyan's heart was filled with guilt as she blamed herself. She hugged Chu Qingyan tightly, and when she felt Chu Qingyan's cold body shiver, her heart started to ache. Cheng Yenluo shook her head. Her voice was sad and hoarse. No one is wrong. No one did anything wrong. It's just that we're not fated to be together. When we met at the right time, we didn't make good use of it. Yenluo, don't be sad. I'll get Big Ice Cube to stand up for you and teach Ethereal a lesson. He'll apologize to you. Don't be sad, okay? Chu Qingyan gently patted her back and comforted her gently. Cheng Yenluo shook her head again. Little girl, I'm afraid that I won't be able to love anyone anymore. Her voice was sorrowful and hopeless. She sounded like a lost person who had completely given up hope of finding her way back. Chu Qingyan could feel her endless loneliness and sorrow. She was afraid that something would happen to her. She wanted to say something, but her words were stuck in her throat and she couldn't say a word. Love was either honey or poison. Some people would be happy forever, while others would sentence themselves to death. No one else could understand this feeling. In the end, Cheng Yenluo was exhausted from crying. Raindrops fell on her eyelashes, mixing with her crystal-clear tears as they flowed down her cheeks. Warmth and coldness alternated between her cheeks, just like how her body was in a state of ice and fire. When she closed her eyes, she seemed to see a familiar figure standing in front of her. It was so close, yet so far away. Murong, I won't look for you anymore. It's too tiring. The scariest thing in life wasn't falling in love without knowing where it came from. It was falling in love with no way out and falling into the abyss. If I could start over, Murong-ju, I wouldn't want to see you again. She smiled gently and tears rolled down her cheeks. Chapter 943. When Ethereal heard that Yenluo hadn't returned, he was worried. He couldn't help but come out to look for her. He happened to see the young princess Consort standing with her and felt relieved. He steeled his heart and prepared to leave, but when he saw that she had fainted, he rushed to her without hesitation. Chu Qingyan held the umbrella in one hand and couldn't support Yenluo's weight with the other. Just as she was about to call for help, a white figure rushed over and took the person in her arms. When she saw who it was, she instinctively wanted to ask him how he had tortured such a good girl like Yenluo to this extent. However, the current situation didn't allow her to do so. After Ethereal took Yenluo's pulse, he looked shocked. Without another word, he carried Yenluo into the courtyard. Chu Qingyan knew that something had happened and immediately followed him. Ethereal kicked the door open and said as he walked, "Young Princess Consort, please prepare some hot water and clean clothes for Yenluo. She's running a fever." Chu Qingyan immediately turned to instruct the servants to prepare. 15 minutes later, she cleaned Yenluo's body and changed her into clean clothes. Then, she stood aside and waited for Ethereal to check her pulse. She's been in the rain for too long. Coupled with her unstable emotions, her body is too weak. The cold has invaded her body and she's running a high fever. I'll go and get some medicine and have someone send it over later. I'll have to trouble you to make her drink it. Ethereal retracted his hand and his tightly knitted brows relaxed. He shouldn't appear in front of her at this time. Hence, he took a deep look at the person on the bed and resolutely got up to leave. Chu Qingyan caught the meaning behind his words and frowned. She stood in front of him and suppressed the anger in her heart. Ethereal, I don't know what happened between you and Yen Luo. I don't know why you treat her so coldly, but I have to tell you that she became like this because of you. Don't you feel guilty seeing her so haggard lying here? Ethereal lowered his eyes. Young Princess Consort, this is between me and Yen Luo. Did he mean for her to stay out of this? Upon hearing this, Chu Qingyan was infuriated. Her suppressed anger suddenly erupted. Yes, this is between the two of you. I shouldn't meddle in this. But Yen Luo is my friend, a friend that I treat with sincerity. I feel sad and distressed to see her go from being full of vitality to such a sorrowful state. You've known her for so long. Let's not talk about now. In the past, the two of you were in love with each other and admired each other. Even if this feeling disappeared, the feelings of the past were still there, right? Can you just abandon her without any guilt and watch her suffer from the pain of her illness? Ethereal, how can you bear to do this? Ethereal silently endured the young consort's reproach. After she finished speaking, his expression was still calm. He slowly said, Young consort, this subordinate feels that it is better to end the pain quickly than to prolong the pain. Instead of continuing to cause chaos, it is better to be as calm as water and never meet again. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but widen her eyes. Was this person still ethereal? Was this the ethereal who had wholeheartedly sacrificed for Yen Luo behind her back? Ethereal, you, at this moment, Ethereal bowed in the direction of the door. Master. Chu Qingyan turned her head and saw the person standing in the room. She couldn't help but vent her anger on him. Discipline your subordinate yourself. Abandoning her after seducing her and toying with her feelings. Stubborn and unrepentant. Xiao Su frowned slightly and said disapprovingly, Ian, watch your words. Chu Qingyan knew that she had misspoken, but she was still in a fit of anger. She gritted her teeth and turned to take care of Yen Luo. Xiao Su glanced at the angry little fellow, then his gaze finally landed on Ethereal. Come out with me. Ethereal acknowledged and turned to look at the person lying on the bed. Then, he called for a doctor in the city to get some medicine and followed his master out. It was raining cats and dogs outside. Rainwater poured down from the eaves like a waterfall, separating the quiet and the bustling world into two different worlds. Ethereal followed Xiao Su down the long corridor. The sound of the rain falling and the bustling world made one feel incomparably cold and desolate. Xiao Su turned to look at the subordinate in front of him, whom he had never had to worry about. At this moment, his face was dejected and lonely, as if he had lost his soul. I shouldn't have interfered with your personal affairs, but Ian has always been concerned about the relationship between the two of you. I don't want your matters to affect her recovery. Ethereal was stunned by his blunt words. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. His master was being so straightforward. Couldn't he take his subordinate's feelings into consideration? Master, he wanted to say something, but the master in front of him raised his hand and stopped him. I don't know what happened between the two of you, but Ethereal, as a man, you must have the courage to take responsibility. Moreover, if you really care about a person, then treat her well. Usually, Xiao Su often talked about them in official matters, but this was the first time he commented on his subordinate's private affairs. He felt a little strange. But when he thought about how the little fellow was restless because of their matters today, Xiao Su couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. This matter had to be resolved as soon as possible. He didn't want the little fellow to be distracted by someone other than him. Moreover, he couldn't bear to see his subordinate troubled by love and depressed. Hearing this, Kongling was a little surprised that he would one day hear these words from his master's mouth, but he quickly calmed down. He didn't pour out his grievances, but brought up another matter. Master, do you remember when we were ambushed on the way to the Fuli mountain range under imperial orders? In order to protect the little princess consort, you sent her away from your side? Xiao Su nodded. After that, he looked deeply at Ethereal. You wanted to protect her. Ethereal sighed softly. His master was so smart. He understood once he said it. He smiled bitterly. Master, this subordinate didn't want her to be in fear and worry. Her life was in danger, just like how you felt when you sent the little princess consort away. Xiao Su looked at him. But Ethereal, have you ever thought about whether the way you sent her away was right? You didn't want her to be hurt, but before her life was in danger, the first person to make her suffer was yourself. Ethereal stood rooted to the ground, stunned. Xiao Su wanted to say more, but he wasn't good at this. He walked in front of Ethereal and patted him on the shoulder. Think about it carefully. Don't let yourself regret it for the rest of your life. He put down his hand and prepared to leave. At this moment, he heard Ethereal ask with lowered eyes, Master, why did you change your mind and let the little princess consort stay in the military camp? These words made Xiao Su stop in his tracks. He looked sideways at the boundless curtain of rain and slowly said, maybe she's been gone for too long. She doesn't want to be alone anymore. Xiao Su's eyes darkened. He suddenly wanted to see the little fellow. Chapter 944. His master had already left. At this moment, Ethereal stood in the corridor and turned to look at the misty world. He and Xiaoyan were different from his master and the little princess consort. They had been separated for so many years. If he talked nicely, she might not be willing to leave and return to Jiangnan to wait for him. Instead of giving her hope and disappointing her in the end, it was better to keep her as far away from him as possible. From now on, as long as you live well in this world, I'll protect you regardless of whether I'm dead or alive. He chuckled softly, as if the rain had drifted in and moistened his eyes. In the room, Chu Qingyan was pacing back and forth, glancing at the door from time to time. When Xiao Su walked in, her eyes lit up, but when she saw that there was no one behind him, her gaze dimmed. Where's Ethereal? He went back. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows when he saw the change in her expression. Chu Qingyan was very disappointed. She slammed her hands on the table and exploded in anger. I was wrong about Ethereal. I didn't expect him to be such an Ethereal. Seeing her clap her hands, Xiao Su's handsome face twitched slightly. If Kong Ling was here at this moment, he would have been slapped in the face. Look, Yen Luo is such a beautiful and talented girl. She's 1 in 100 in a crowd. How could he hurt her so casually? If he were in the modern world, where there are more men than women, he would be single for the rest of his life. Chu Qingyan was so angry that she spoke without thinking. Fortunately, Xiao Su was focused on her hands and didn't pay attention to her words. Things have already turned out this way. As outsiders, we can't say anything. Don't think too much, Xiao Su consoled her. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and turned her anger on him. You men are all trash. To think that we've been so loyal to you and devoted our hearts to you, but this is what we get in return. Xiao Su, who had been wronged, coughed softly and said, when have I ever treated you like this? Don't overturn the whole boat with one pole. You haven't done that yet. As the saying goes, a crooked stick will have a crooked shadow. Ethereal is your subordinate. Who knows, you might end up like him one day. She could not be angry at Ethereal. After all, he was Big Ice Cube's man. However, Big Ice Cube was her man, so she vented her anger on him. Xiao Su felt very wronged, but when he saw her slightly red eyes, the words of justification swallowed in his throat. In the end, he didn't say anything. Instead, he walked forward and reached out to hug her. It seems like everything I say is wrong. She reached out and pushed his chest. She struggled, but she was not as strong as him. In the end, she gave up. Most of her anger dissipated, and her expression changed to one of helplessness and panic. Big Ice Cube, will you abandon me one day like Ethereal did to Smokey? How did he get dragged into this? Xiao Su was about to scold her for talking nonsense, but when he met her hazy and watery eyes, his voice involuntarily softened. I won't. When we were in Lian City, Ethereal would personally go to the kitchen to tell the cook Smokey's taste. On hot days, he would personally cook mung bean porridge and have someone bring plum soup to her. On cold days, he would carefully ask the servants if the heater in her room was enough. When she went out to play, he would wait until she came back before going to rest. He never let Smokey know about these things. I can tell that Ethereal really likes Smokey, and Smokey also likes Ethereal very much. However, why would Ethereal say that he doesn't want to be with Smokey so easily? The feelings of the past are not smoke. Once the sun comes out, they will vanish in an instant. Humans are more emotional than plants because they have 7 emotions and 6 desires. They have hearts, greed, anger, and foolishness. They can choose to love or be loved. If you can give up on someone you deeply love just like that, wouldn't it be too rash and simple? Is deep love something so cheap? Is it only a matter of a thought to want or not? Chu Qingyan felt more confused than ever as she thought about Ethereal and Smokey. She was a beginner. It was her first time stepping into the field of love. She didn't know how to love someone, how to hold someone's hand for the rest of their life, but she had a vision and followed her heart. However, Yen Luo and Kong Ling had been together for more than 10 years. Their love was strong, and their hatred was strong. They had been entangled for so long, but their love was no less than Yen Luo and Big Ice Cubes. However, even Kong Ling could let go of a relationship so easily and push away the person she loved deeply. Yen Luo couldn't help but wonder if love could last forever. Could it guarantee that they would support each other forever? She was at a loss, scared, and panicked. Xiao Su could feel the uneasiness of the person in his arms. He frowned and thought to himself, Ethereal and Smokey are really worrisome. He sighed softly and placed a hand on her shoulder. He pulled her out of his arms and straightened her in front of him. Her nose and eyes were red. Although she wasn't crying, she looked like she was on the verge of tears. It was even more worrying. Her pitiful appearance made him want to hold her tightly in his arms. However, he knew that if he didn't answer her today and reassure her, he was afraid that she would hide a knot in her heart when he wanted to be close to the little one in the future. Ian, do you have so little confidence in our relationship? He asked. She opened her mouth, but her words were stuck. She hesitated and hesitated. Xiao Su sighed. Don't you think it's too rash to deny our relationship over the past few years just because of Ethereal and Smokey? She could hear a hint of loneliness in his words. Chu Qingyan's eyes cleared up a little. She bit her lip and shook her head. He said earnestly, sometimes, what we see with our eyes and hear with our ears isn't necessarily the truth. I believe that Ethereal has his difficulties. Difficulties? What difficulties? She was immediately attracted by these 2 words. Although he knew the reason, Ethereal didn't want others to know. As his master, there was no reason for him to gossip. He blinked his eyes and avoided this topic. Ethereal's feelings for Miss Cheng are unquestionable. However, we are outsiders. Even if we can see more clearly than they can, we can't interfere with them. Time will prove many things. Let them deal with this relationship on their own. This is something that outsiders can't influence. But, no buts. Xiao Su reached out his other hand and caressed her face. His gaze was as gentle as water. Ian, I am me, and you are you. My feelings for you are like the radiance of the sun and the moon. It will never change. This confession caught her off guard. While she was still in a daze, a dark shadow loomed over her. Her lips felt warm, and he sucked on them. Then, he pried open her lips and teeth, and swept her lips and tongue domineeringly. She couldn't help but close her eyes. She placed her hands on his shoulders and sank with him.